Good morning. Will the Committee on Zoning please come to order? At this time, this morning, I would like to welcome committee members Radian Cordero, Tyler DeSantos Tan, Esther Kia-Aina, and Councilmember Matt Wire. Although remote testimony is being permitted, this is a regular in-person meeting and not a remote meeting by interactive conference technology under Hawaii Revised Statute Section 92-3.7. Therefore, the meeting will continue, notwithstanding loss of audiovisual communication with the remote testifiers or loss of the public broadcast of the meeting. Members of the public will be allowed to provide oral testimony on all items on the agenda in two ways, either remotely and in person in the council chamber. Oral testimony will be allowed when each agenda item is taken up in the following order. First, it will be remote testimony, and secondly, in-person testimony in the council chamber. Before testifying, each person shall state their full name and the agenda item they are testifying on. Each speaker may not have anyone else read their statement and is limited to a 1-minute presentation per item. Once more, a 1-minute presentation per item. All persons who have registered to testify remotely by video conference or by phone will be called upon first. When your name is called, please monitor your screen and activate your audio feed when prompted. The following are some friendly reminders and tips. Video conference from a quiet location if possible. If you are watching the proceedings on Olelo, please mute your device at the time you're called to testify. Third, when the timer on the screen reaches 0, please conclude your remarks promptly. For those who are joining us by telephone only, I will identify you by the last 3 digits of your phone number. When your number is called, please press *6 to unmute yourself when prompted. Once all the remote testifiers have testified, I will proceed to the in-person testimony in the council chamber. Persons who have not registered will be given an opportunity to speak following the oral testimonies of the registered speakers. Written testimonies, including the testifier's address, email address, and phone number, will be available to the public as described on the posted agenda. As a courtesy to all, please turn off your cell phones. Let's move on, members of the Zoning Committee, to agenda number 1, for action, which is Resolution 23-118. This resolution grants a special management area use permit to David Kim to allow for the demolition of an existing single-family dwelling, the decommissioning of an existing swimming pool, and third, the construction of a new single-family dwelling that includes a driveway, a 3-car garage, and swimming pool on approximately 27,546 square foot shoreline lot, located in the R-7.5 residential district at 1001 Kaimoku Place in the Kainani neighborhood of Waialae and is identified as TMK 3-5-058:011. Members, we have for you posted to the agenda a proposed Committee Draft 1 version of the resolution. For your information, a summary of the amendments is listed on the agenda. Joining us in the council chamber is Kristen Iserloh from Iserloh Architects, the applicant's agent, who will be providing a brief presentation. For your information, the presentation is available online as miscellaneous communication number 336 of 2023. Ms. Iserloh, are you here? Mr. Iserloh, okay. Would you like to testify, please? Kristen, yes. Yep.
Oh, okay. I guess I was told that I would have a presentation on the video or on the screen with a clicker.
Okay, hold on, Mr. Iserloh.
That side?
That side, yep. Go to the right side of the chain.
Okay, well, thank you for having me, first of all. I thought I'd start by giving just a brief introduction to the property. There is an existing house on it, and it's kind of, maybe many of you might know it as the old Sony house. It abuts the ocean and the Wailea Golf Course. And currently, the house is about 15,000 square feet interior. Here's some other photos of it. And this is the existing site plan of the house. The footprint of the house is shown in yellow. And then there's a swimming pool to the very left side, which is inside the 40-foot setback, which was noted that it will be decommissioned. It's located in the flood hazard zone. It's actually not located with flood hazard. The flood hazard is, of course, on the ocean, but the house sits above the zone. As far as the sea level rise map goes, the diagram's a little misconceiving because there's a wall there. So there actually will not be a penetration of any sea level rise, although if there would be, any of the sea level rise would not affect the new structure or the new swimming pool. And the same goes for the erosion. There won't be any really erosion there, again, because of the seawall. Here's a diagram of the shoreline certification that we are getting that's on the existing seawall. Oh, sorry. And the new house, just to kind of as a background, it will be less in interior square footage, but overall it'll be a little larger because we have lanais. The lanais themselves are counted double, and so that's why the square footage is a little bit larger, but overall the footprint of the building is less, and there will be more open space. We will have, as far as the floor area, the lot coverage, that will all be well under the allowable. And of course the height and other things. Let's see. Oops, sorry. Here's a diagram of the demo. So we will be demolishing the existing house. As I said, we're basically going to be scraping the lot clean, aside there's a mango tree there, and there's some other vegetation there. But and then we're going to start over. Here's a diagram of the new site plan. And so you can kind of see in the yellow, that's the interior square footage. And then there will be the kind of the darker yellow is the lanai space. So it'll all be open. Here's a diagram that's kind of showing the new house superimposed over the existing house. And so you can see that it's a little smaller, actually, in size. And of course, here's a more detailed drawing of the site plan, kind of indicating the scope of work. We will be keeping, actually, not much in the back. We're going to be, again, demolishing the pool, getting rid of a lot of the concrete there, and growing grass. So overall, the new residents will feel a lot more open. Here's, I guess, a quick kind of rendering of the front. And then we can kind of the floor plans. roof plan, elevations, sections, and kind of an overall rendering of the house itself. This will be from the front, and this will be in the back. In conclusion, I'd just ask for your support in passing the SMA permit. We've been working on this for quite some time, and we believe that this will be an enhancement to the neighborhood. Right now, we're trying to demo the existing house as soon as possible. We have a homeless situation there that they're breaking in the house every month or two, and we're really trying to move this project forward and make a better look for the Sony Open, if anything. And yeah, hope to move forward.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, sure.
Before we proceed on, may I introduce Chair Waters? Tommy Waters is here, and Council Member Andrea Tupola, who is also here. Okay, members, any questions for Mr. Isloff? Okay, Council Member Tupola.
Good morning. Thank you for being here.
Yes.
In the transcript that they had for the public hearing, there was a comment about them having precautionary archaeological monitoring due to, could you just explain to me what that's going to look like, the precautionary archaeological monitoring? That will be somebody you guys hire?
Sure. So what we did in the SMA study is that we went ahead and did an archaeological survey. And that entails making trenching on various portions of the lot. So we were basically exploring to see if there were any archaeological sites on that property. And what we found was there was a remnants of charcoal that we had it analyzed in a lab in Florida. But it didn't seem to be of any significance. It seemed like an old fire, maybe somewhere. And so, with that information, the recommendation from SHPD was that we should have archaeological monitoring during the foundation phase of the project. So while we're digging for the foundation, we'll have an archaeologist that we hire standing by to make sure if we encounter anything, we will be able to address it right there and then.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. Thank you, Chair.
Sure.
Okay, any further questions, members? Chair Waters.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning.
Hey, my notes show me, they're telling me that the owner lives in California.
That's correct.
Okay, so not a Hawaii resident.
Not a current Hawaii resident, although he does have a place here. He does have a residence here. So,
Okay, so this would be his second residence.
This would be his second residence.
Okay.
Correct. And I think the first one will probably not, he will not live in that one once this one's built.
I see. Sort of off topic, because it seems like you meet all the requirements for the SMA permit, although the setback is 40 feet rather than the new law, which requires a larger setback than 40 feet. But I'll ask DPP whether or not they're cool with that. One of the things we've been talking about, well, first of all, he's currently paying residential A property taxes for this piece of property.
On this property?
On this
I'm not
property?
sure. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I don't know anything about his tax.
If we're contemplating a vacancy tax, so if the house is left vacant, I mean, this thing is going to be worth, what do you think, 10 million plus when it's all done? Guaranteed, right?
Guaranteed.
And we're contemplating a vacancy tax, where if a home is left vacant for out-of-state homeowners who are just investing in Hawaii, and we want to maybe double or triple what the normal tax rate is, do you think your client is cool with that?
Well, I think he plans to live here, so I think he will be, the home will not be vacant. I think one of the reasons why he has left it as it is in its current state now is he has daughters that were finishing high school, And he didn't want to build it and then have it just sit there and rot away in the elements.
Yeah.
And so,
I mean, in one sense, we're thankful that people are willing to come in, build new houses, put our construction workers to work. But at the same time, if you don't live here, you're willing to pay a little bit more in taxes, and we could then use this money to build more affordable housing for other people, local people who need affordable housing. I'm just curious if that's your client, does he have that kind of heart, somebody who cares about the people of Hawaii and willing to pay a little bit more, and we let him build this beautiful, big old $10 million mansion?
I mean, I can't speak for him. I mean, I know that he does have ties to Hawaii. He does have, so he's definitely planning to live here. And, whether or not if he would leave it vacant and be willing to pay more, I mean, that's certainly a question that
I mean, already just at a $10 million house, based on the current tax rate, if the person had a homeowner's exemption, they're still going to be paying quite a bit in taxes, which I appreciate very much, and it's something that we should think about. But other than that, I think you qualify, we'll talk to DPP in a minute, that you qualify under the current law for the SMA, which again is a completely different thing. But thank you so much. Great presentation.
Okay, thank you.
Chair.
Members, any further questions for Mr. Isoloff? Okay, may we proceed on to the Director of Department of Planning and Permitting, Ms. Dawn Takeuchi Apuna. Okay, that's it for now, Mr. Isoloff.
Aloha, Chair, members of the committee, Dawn Apuna, DPP. We are supportive of the proposed CD1 for this SMA.
Okay, any questions for the Director at this point in time? Okay, Councilmember Cordero.
Thank you. Hi, Director. I was just wondering, relating to the SLR, where no further conditions of approval are recommended. This is in where it stated that through observation, only the Makai portion of the site is in the shoreline setback area. And then it says, therefore, no further conditions of approval are recommended. So what is is there a percentage of a property that should be under SLR to be then recommended for further conditions to be considered for approval?
I'm going to have our chief planner speak to that.
Good morning, Chair and members. My name is Elizabeth Krieger. I am the Division Chief for the Land Use Permits Division in the Department of Planning and Permitting. If I understand your question correctly, it is what kinds of sea level rise SLR impacts would require additional conditions of approval?
Yes.
Okay. In the past, when an applicant has proposed development within a sea level rise area where plenty of the property is outside of the sea level rise area, we have recommended that they would move the development to that portion of the site that is outside of the sea level rise area, or at least move the livable area. So if say a swimming pool or an accessory structure was in the sea level rise area, that they move the dwelling portion out. Some of the other conditions that we've required in the past are, for example, using pervious pavers so that water can infiltrate in the ground, so that there's no additional pervious pavement within that area where sea level rise will impact, and not using slab-on-grade foundation styles, so that a dwelling is on micropiles and elevated, so that any future sea level rise would, so that the structure would still be resilient in the face of sea level rise, should there be no other portion of the property that's appropriate and or not affected by sea level rise.
Okay, thank you. And it looks like the Makai side really is just of course, the background and pool and flora and fauna area, right? But still, as we see through different coastal areas, the quicker, I don't know how to describe, but decline of the elements. And so is there a condition where properties, I guess, are checked up on to ensure that they aren't just succumbing to the elements below it?
Today, you're talking about existing development.
Yes.
Yeah, so especially on the North Shore, we have building inspectors going out to certain portions of the North Shore where we know dwellings are specifically susceptible and in fact are being undermined by erosion. We have inspectors going out every month to identify any dwellings that appear to be no longer safe to occupy.
Okay, and then moving forward for ones that we are approving from this day forward onward, right? What are the conditions then thereafter for those that we are allowing now?
Well, hopefully the conditions of approval and the current design standards, particularly design standards to comply with FEMA flood standards, will make those dwellings resilient, and they will be set back sufficiently that we won't need to be doing regular follow-up inspections, but certainly inspectors are available whenever requests for investigation are submitted to the department, and anytime that we, especially if there was some kind of, say, natural disaster, then inspectors would be on the site right away.
Okay, so more reactive than anything, and it's like complaint-driven, I guess.
That's right. For all shoreline lots, we don't have active ongoing inspections, but for those neighborhoods where there's extreme susceptibility, we do have inspections happening.
Okay, because just like the other shorelines, it's just sand and sand dunes, like the other coastal areas. So, okay, all right, thank you. That's my first round. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any further discussion? Okay, yep, Councilmember Tupola.
Thank you for DPP. I just had a quick question regarding the boulder easement. So in the hearing that they had for the SMA, the statement was made that the state didn't finish the process of conveying over the easement right of entry. Does that also affect the SMA? I mean, they did say that they eventually got it in April, but is that a requirement of the SMA that they have that easement right away in the event that something does happen? There are various ones that the state still owns or hasn't conveyed over.
There's no problem with with proceeding with the SMA relating to the state's ongoing easement procedure. The jurisdictional boundary when it comes to shoreline properties is an ongoing complication, but any portion that's mackay of the shoreline belongs to the state. So if a portion of the property extends beyond that, and I believe that the state had found a portion of the seawall was in their jurisdiction, and so it's mostly a situation where they cannot get a certified shoreline survey until the state proceeds with this. So they're always in a bit of a bit of a situation where they can't do this until they do that, and they can't do that until they do this. So we're proceeding forward with the entire project. But there is a former certified shoreline survey that was, I believe, mackay of where the proposed shoreline survey is. And because they're showing that they're outside of the setback, we found that it was okay to proceed.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Members, any questions for Ms. Liz Krieger from DPP? If not, may we proceed on? Okay. Madam Clerk, do we have remote testifiers?
Chair, there are none.
Thank you very much. At this point in time, do we have any in-person testimony?
Chair, there are none.
Okay. At this point in time, members, we are in discussion for the committee draft one. Councilmember Cordero.
Thank you, Chair. My question, I guess, is back to DPP.
Yeah,
something
please.
that Council Chair Tommy Waters brought up relating to the 40-foot setback. I wanted to ask if they're okay with with it being 40 as opposed to, I think, 60 now?
In our analysis on this particular site, we found that there wasn't a justification necessarily to push the dwelling farther back. Ideally, we want dwellings to be as far Mauka on properties as possible. That is part of what Bill 41, which updated Chapter 26, did. It recommended that all dwellings be as close to the Mauka side of the property as possible. This one, of course, as you know, was accepted for processing before the new shoreline setback is in play. That is July 1st, 2024. So if in our analysis we had found that it was in the sea level rise exposure area, or if the property was susceptible to extreme erosion, we probably would have recommended that as a condition. We didn't find that in our analysis, so we allowed, or not allowed, but we didn't recommend conditions relating to that setback.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Kruger. So like, let's say, example, the proposed new residence footprint was where the proposed swimming pool would be. Then you would be like, oh, okay, move them back.
Yeah, that's likely. If the livable portion of the property was that close to the shoreline, we would likely recommend, especially because there is space on this lot, although it's a bit of an oddly shaped lot.
Yes, oh, I mean, yes, so, yeah, thank you.
Any further questions for the department? Okay. If there is no discussion, can the chair just simplify it by sharing with all of you and the general public what the proposed committee draft 1 makes as far as its amendment? We're amending the resolution title to read as follows. We're granting a special management area use permit to allow the construction of a new single-family dwelling unit and other improvements at the tax map key 3-5-058:011 in Wailea, Oahu. In the second whereas clause, corrects the date of the public hearing to April 28, 2023, instead of May 20th, 2022, and the public hearing attendees. Third, in the third whereas clause, corrects the reference to the revised ordinance of Honolulu of 2021 instead of the revised ordinance of Honolulu of 1990, and clarifies that the references to the revised ordinance of Honolulu 25-3.1 and 25-3.2 are referring to the versions of those sections as they read prior to the enactment of Ordinance 23-4, which is relating to the special management area, which took effect on March 9, 2023, because Ordinance 23-4 applies only to permit applications submitted on or after the effective date of the ordinance. D, in the fourth whereas clause, corrects the date that the City Council received the findings and recommendations of the Department of Planning and Permitting to May 30th, 2023. E, in the be it resolved clause, in condition A, adds that the new application for the SMA use permit for the project will be processed in accordance with the ordinance and statute in effect at the time of the new application is accepted by DPP, the Department of Planning and Permitting. In condition D, clarifies that the stop work requirement must be clearly stated on all project construction permit and building permit plans instead of any earth-moving development permit plans and building plans. Condition C clarifies that the archaeological monitoring requirement must be noted on the construction permit plans and building plans instead of the development permit plans. And condition number 4, condition E, revises list item 6 to add that a 300-foot buffer must be observed if a monk's seal pup is present. Otherwise, a 100-foot buffer is sufficient, and we clarify that the enumerated conditions relating to relating to minimizing impacts to species that may traverse the vicinity of the project site must be clearly stated under environmental notes on all project construction permit and building permit plans. Instead, once more, of not any development permit plans and building plans. And condition F replaces all references to a development permit with references to a construction permit or building permit. And finally, in condition G, conforms the language relating to the compliance with city ordinance and other governmental requirements to the standard language included in the SMA use permit resolution. And finally, we're making miscellaneous and technical and non-substantive amendments. So that is the committee draft one of the proposed 23-118. Any discussion? Just to clarify everything for the record, for the general public at large. Okay, so if there is no further discussion, the chair would like to recommend that Resolution 23-118 be amended to the posted committee draft 1. Any discussion, any objections, or reservation? What's that? Yeah. Once more, the chair recommends that Resolution 23-118 be amended to the posted committee draft 1. Any discussion, objections, or reservations? Hearing none, the resolution has been amended to a committee draft 1. The chair then recommends that Resolution 23-118, committee draft 1, be reported out for adoption. Any discussion, objections, or reservations? Hearing none, so ordered. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Aisalan. That's it. Moving on to agenda item number 2, Resolution 23-62. This resolution approves a conceptual plan for an interim plan development transit project for 1538 Kapiolani LLC to redevelop 4,166 square feet of land with a mixed-use development within the Alawana Neighborhood Transit-Oriented Development Plan area on land zone BMX3 Community Business Mixed-Use District located at 1538 Kapiolani Boulevard and identified as tax map key 2-3-021:006. Members, we have listed on the agenda an addendum, a proposed committee draft 1 version of the resolution, and for your information, a summary of the amendments is listed on the agenda addendum. Joining us in the council chamber is Isaiah Sato from RM Towel Corporation, the applicant's agent, who will be providing a brief presentation of the project. For your information, the presentation is available online as Miscellaneous Communication 335 of 2023. Okay, Mr. Sato.
Good morning, Zoning Chair Say and members of the Zoning Committee, as well as Councilmember Tupola. Thank you for coming today and allowing us to present at this hearing. So today I have a short presentation on the project. So the project is the 1538 Kapiolani Tower, an interim plan development transit project, or an IPDT project. This is the most recent IPDT project. The last one was actually back in 2020. So the applicant, 1538 Kapiolani LLC, is proposing to construct a mixed-use project comprised of 331 for-sale residential units. On the main site, at 2 off-site locations, the applicant is proposing to provide 101 affordable rental housing units to a total of about 23.5% of the total units between the 3 sites. And they're going through the IPDT permit process. So this is an overall map of constructed, approved, or under construction IPDT projects in the Alawana TOD area. So working on the outside in that gray, the gray boundary is the Alawana TOD plan boundary. And the main project site, 1530 Kapiolani, is in red, right along Kapiolani Boulevard. So Kapiolani Boulevard is on the Makai side of the project site, and on the Mauka side is Makaloa Street. About 700 feet to the Mauka side of the project, there's an existing 5-story commercial building at 765 Amana Street. And this is the first of 2 off-site affordable housing locations. We're planning to convert that commercial building into affordable rental buildings. And the last project site up at 1564 Kalakaua is shown at the upper right of this image. Kalakaua is on the west side of the project site, and on the east side is Punahou Street. So this is a clip of the project site. It's the old KGMB building. Currently, there is Central Pacific Bank. There's a pho restaurant at the corner. And the lot is about 40,000 square feet. Under the LUO, we're Zone BMX3, Community Business Mixed Use. And in the Ala Moana TOD plan, they introduced a new district, BMX3B, Kapiolani Mixed Use, for the Kapiolani corridor. So this slide on the right side, this is a rendering of our proposed 400-foot tower. The tower itself will have 331 residential units, from studios to 3-bedroom, 55 studios, 135 one-bedrooms, 115 two-bedrooms, and 26 3-bedrooms. On the ground floor, we'll have approximately 8,700 square feet of commercial space. The primary commercial space will be along Kapiolani Boulevard, with an additional smaller commercial space on Makaloa Street. This next slide is a brief program of the tower itself. So starting from the ground up, again, we have retail in yellow on the ground floor. Above that is the parking podium up to the 6th floor, and on top of that floor, on level 7, is the amenity deck in green. We have outdoor amenities as well as indoor amenities in the pink color, and that's followed by the tower above in blue with the residential units. So this slide shows our ground floor plan. So I'm gonna work from the west side on the left towards the right side, but just to orient yourself, below the project site is Kapiolani Boulevard on the Makai side, and at the top of this image is Makaloa Street, which is the Mauka side of the project. So at the far west end of the project, we're including a pedestrian, vehicular, and a bicycle path through. So on the far left, there's a small call out for a pedestrian walkway. So we're gonna provide this for the community as a mid-block crossing, so that the community won't have to go to the nearest intersection there. We'll also be providing a vehicular pass-through. Traffic-wise on Kapiolani, it'll be right in, right out. And the main port cachere and parking entrance will be on the Makaloa Street side of the project. In the two yellows, again, it's the retail areas. On Kapiolani, we have a larger retail, and at the top, there's a smaller retail. And in the upper right is the main parking entrance there. So this next slide just quickly shows the bicycle stalls that we proposed in the IPDT application. So we proposed a total of 262 bicycle stalls, which includes 38 short-term stalls and 224 long-term stalls. Excuse me. This 262 is above the required LUO, as well as the recommended TOD bicycle stalls there. In this plan, we show 10 short-term stalls on the second floor, and from working with DPP and with the proposed CD1, it was recommended that those short-term stalls be placed on the first floor. So that's something we intend to work through with the department. This next slide shows our total vehicle stalls proposed in the application. So we propose 433 residential stalls, as well as 33 retail and guest stalls. There is a handful of stalls on the ground floor, but the primary parking will be in the parking podium on the 2nd through the 6th floor there. This is a rendering of the project site. This is the Kapiolani street frontage there, if you're standing across the street on Ala Moana center side. So this is another rendering of the project site. If you're standing directly Makai across Kapiolani Boulevard, in front of one Ala Moana looking Mauka there. So the two monkey pods on the left are existing monkey pods to remain. So we will maintain those trees. The far right side, there's, in the existing condition, it's an access driveway to access the commercial building. We're planning on closing that driveway, extending the pedestrian sidewalk through to have a continuous landscaping and sidewalk area, and we're proposing to provide a new tree at that corner. Along the parking podium itself, we're going to be working at providing nice parking screens, as well as various portions of green screens throughout that height. And on the ground floor will be the retail area. So this is another rendering of the Kapiolani streetscape. As you can see on the ground floor, we're hoping for very open glass windows to have a very inviting retail for the Kapiolani and the greater community there. This sidewalk A portion of the sidewalk will be in the city right away, and the remaining will be in the private right away. So we're planning on having a nice wide sidewalk to allow safe pedestrian walkways there. Okay, so this is the first of two slides regarding the offsite affordable housing. This first offsite affordable housing is 765 Amana Street. In the image on the right, the main project site is right at that top middle portion of the image at the intersection of Makaloa and Amana Street. The first offsite affordable housing, the lot is around 15,000 square feet with an existing 5-story commercial building. The applicant is proposing to redevelop this site or to convert the existing office building into a residential building with 64 studio to 2-bedroom units, which will come out to about 15% of the total residential units on all 3 lots. All of these residential rental units will be limited to 80% AMI and restricted for a term of 30 years. The second site we acquired is 1564 Kalakaua Street, and on the image on the right, to orient yourself, Kalakaua is on the upper part of that image there, and Phillip Street, which is on the Makai side, is on the left side of that image. But it's an existing lot with 2 2-story buildings with a total of 6 apartments. We're proposing to redevelop this site into 37 1 to 3-bedroom affordable rental housing units. And again, all rental units will be limited to 80% AMI for 30 years there. And this slide quickly shows the total residential count on all 3 lots. So the 1538 Kapiolani site will have 331 units, 765 Amana will have 64 units, and 1564 Kalakaua will have 37 units. That comes out to about 76% at market residential units and about 23 to 23.5% affordable offsite rental units there. And this next slide touches upon our community benefits. So, I mean, as you guys are aware, we're asking for zoning flexibility in regards to height, density, and setbacks. And we are providing, or we're intending to provide a commensurate package of community benefits that includes, from the top, affordable housing. So the 2 sites that we include affordable housing that are 2 tiers. A portion of that will go towards the Chapter 29 affordable housing requirements, and the remaining units will go towards our community benefits package. So 36 of our units will be for our community benefits package at the 80% AMI for 30 years. Car share stalls to support the multimodal transportation and the TOD objectives. We're going to be providing 10 car share stalls and 40 bike share stalls amongst the 3 project sites. We're also intending to provide a contribution towards multimodal transportation and TOD objectives in the Ala Moana area. And the bottom 2, the second to the bottom, the pedestrian, bicycle, and vehicular path is the mid-block crossing that is showed at the west side of the project site. And we're also going to be providing various streetscape improvements on Kapiolani Boulevard as well as Makaloa Street from curb to curb on both sides. And thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sato. Members, any questions? Councilmember Wire.
Mahalo, Chair. And mahalo for that presentation, Mr. Sato. I just had a few questions after reviewing the testimony and connecting with you folks before. So just starting with the affordable units. So it sounded like you're saying one of the buildings is commercial, so there won't be any loss of residential units. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, that's the Amana Street property?
Yes.
Okay. And then you know the Kalakaua Avenue building, so it looks like you have 6 units that are going to be transitioned into 37 units?
That's correct.
Okay. Do you know what those 6 units there now have any affordability requirements? Or if they're just market rate?
Yes, our understanding was that there's no affordability requirements, excuse me, on those lots. And just so you know, we do plan on working with the residents if there's available rentals on our sites or in the area.
Awesome. Okay, appreciate that. And then I saw questions just about the locations of the affordable units too. So if you could go back to the TOD slide. So if you could just walk through. So both of the affordable properties did you say they were within the TOD area or somewhere outside, or could you just elaborate on that?
Yes, of course. So it's a little hard to see, but on the outside of this image, that gray line that starts right next to McKinley High School and goes down to Ala Moana Boulevard, goes up Atkinson, and then on that backside, that's the Ala Moana TOD boundary.
Okay.
So all three of the project sites are within the Ala Moana TOD boundary within the Ala Moana TOD plan.
Okay. Because I think it goes up to Young Street. Is that your understanding, the actual boundary of the
Yeah,
TOD?
so this image actually cuts off the top portion
Okay.
of the boundary, but we are all within there.
Okay, perfect. Do you know about how far away was that again from the rail station?
I believe it's about, I believe the Kalakaua site is about a half a mile. I'd have to confirm that, but I think it's around there.
Okay, no, I really appreciate that. And then when we're looking at timeline, I think you had said 30 years was the affordability requirement on those properties?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, and that's for all 101
Yes.
units? Okay,
correct.
okay, mahalo. And then if we could just go to the market rate units. Some questions I know we talked about. Could you just kind of go over the nature of these units a little bit more in depth? Because I think some questions that come up is whether these are going to be luxury units or who the intended owners of these units are going to be.
I'm going to call out the developer to help answer that. Thank
Okay, mahalo.
Good morning.
Morning.
The market tower is, we're not, it's not intended for, it's not like a frontline. Oh, sorry. My name's Tim Lee. I'm with JL Capital. They're not intended, they're not a high-end luxury. It's a mid-market building. So the intended owners of this building, I mean, it's predominantly going to be locals. The statutes in Hawaii also requires 50% of the units to be marketed to give priority to local buyers. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Maybe you could tell me a little bit more about both of those. So on the first point, just so I know what to be looking out for, what distinguishes a property maybe as a luxury property versus, a standard housing for local
So
families?
I think a luxury product, I mean, they're in excess of like $2,000, $3,000 a square foot type product. This is not that. We're right now in our financial underwriting, we're probably around $1,400 a square foot. So,
Okay.
yeah. So it's in line with something like the Collection, Waihanua. It's a mid-market product. So.
Okay. No, appreciate that. And then on the latter point you made, can you walk me through that again? So how are you going to ensure that these units are getting into the hands of local families?
The statutes require developments to offer 50% of the units for the first 30 days of sales to owner occupants. So that is a requirement that we all have to abide by.
Okay.
So,
and historically, how challenging is it to fill those units before they transition out of the homeowner occupant category? I mean, do you feel like it'd be pretty easy, or that 50% will get filled up?
I'm fairly confident we're going to have more than 50% in terms of local owner occupants.
Awesome.
So,
Okay.
a lot of homeowners who are kind of stepping up from maybe their first home. I mean, that's who we're really targeting.
Okay.
So,
Mahalo, Mr. Lee. Mahalo,
Yeah.
Chair.
thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Kiaina.
Thank you for your presentation. Can I ask how much will the two off-site projects cost to be developed?
I'm going to call Tim back up to answer that. Thank you.
Hi. The two offsite projects currently in our projections, those two offsite projects are going to cost us in excess of $37 million. We've already acquired the properties, so these aren't sort of a wish list, or we're planning to.
Sure.
We've gone and already acquired, and we have ownership of both the offsite properties.
Is the acquisition cost factored into the 36 million already?
Yes.
Okay, thank you so much. I understand that construction and borrowing costs have been increasing substantially over the last couple of years in particular. Can you share more about how the costs of the affordable units have changed since the beginning of your team's planning?
Sure. In our current project, you know, our construction prices have significantly gone up since even right before COVID, so 3 to 5 years. We're going to track down a report that the industry produces in terms of the rise in construction costs, and it'll demonstrate a pretty significant cost. Financing costs, on the other hand, has, as we all know, interest rates for project financing, it's probably on an average doubled. So what's happening today is conventional banks who take on the least risky portion of your capital stack, they're reducing the percentage of the project costs. So what that's requiring us as a developer to do is bring in more expensive mezzanine money, and that has gone up significantly. So in our current projects, when we started our project, we've seen about 4 or 5% delta in terms of borrowing costs, because typically these construction loans aren't a fixed rate deal. So it's a spread over base rates, so like a SOFR rate. And so we've seen our costs go up significantly even today. So when we first started underwriting this project, I mean, our costs have gone up significantly.
Do you have any estimate? So instead of 36 million, what do you think it would have cost if you factored in the percentage you?
We're updating our model, but I'll give you an example. We actually just worked on something yesterday afternoon. So the National Home Builders Association, they've produced for instance, for every, I say, do you have that? So for every 1 million borrowed, let's say in 2020, when interest rates were hovering around 6%, the National Association of Home Builders are seeing about 12%. So borrowing costs have doubled in Q1 of 23.
Okay.
So from a dollar amount, if you're borrowing $1 million, it's quite significant. And you know, for us, our construction costs are typically all financed because we already own the properties. One thing that helps us is that one of the properties that we own, the larger of the two, we have debt on it, but we have debt that's been locked in for quite a bit. So that actually helps us a little bit. But in terms of construction costs, we're typically going to finance all of that. So
Okay.
we'll follow up with kind of hard numbers after this meeting.
Okay, thank you so much. I'd like to talk about the size of some of your affordable housing units.
Yes.
There have been criticism raised over the size of some of the affordable units in this project and a past project, and I myself have raised concerns over a lot of the projects that have small units. So, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, we're not Hong Kong. We shouldn't have to sacrifice quality of life for affordable housing units for the people who live here. So after looking over the plans, I did notice that 5 of the units on each floor of the Amana Street project will be approximately 300 square feet. Is that accurate? How would you respond to criticism that 286 and 300 square feet studios are too small?
We have a good mix. So we have studios that are 300 square feet, but we also have 1-bedrooms and 2-bedroom units that are fairly large. So what we're getting limited by is in terms of unit counts. And you know, for Amana Street, one of the good things is that because it's an office building conversion, we have fairly large ceilings. So we have 12-foot high ceilings in those units. So we feel that those units will not feel like a 200 and 300 square foot unit. Currently, in our current projects, we have 300 square foot studios, and I welcome you to come and look at it. They're not.
Thank you. I will like to come.
Yes, please. They're not. You know, they're not as bad as I think the perception
Are the
is.
current units that you have 12 feet?
At Sky Almona, we do have units that are 300 square feet.
But 12 feet tall?
No, that's not even 12 feet tall. But
Yeah,
if you go and
so-
visit the units, they really aren't. They're very nice units. So
Okay.
yeah, and I welcome you to come and,
Yes,
and see
I
it.
will. I still have concerns. Because I understand the diversity, but at the end of the day, these units, again, sound like Hong Kong units. And lastly, what would the rent be for these units?
We're going to be capped at the 80% average median income for all 101. Typically, in previous projects that have been approved under the IPDT, developers were allowed to bifurcate kind of community benefit units and keep those at 30. I'm sorry, the ordinance at 30 and community benefits at a shorter period. We've had discussions with the DPP, and we agreed to provide all 101 at 30 years at 80%.
Yeah, so break it down. Most people don't, this is for the public as well. What is a studio? What is a one-bedroom?
There's a utility.
Yeah, thank you, Councilmember Kia and Isaiah Sato. As you guys are aware, 80% AMI is limited by the city. Annually, they come out with limitations for 80%, 100%, 120% AMI. For a studio, 1 to 2 persons, that would come out to $1,563 a month. For a 1-bedroom, that would be $1,716 a month. For a 2-bedroom, it would be $2,247 a month. And for a 3-bedroom, it would be up to $3,193 a month. And I want to point out that these numbers include all utilities, maintenance fees. It's all inclusive. That's the max that we can go there.
So going back to the studios at $1,500, is that for one person or two people?
The rate is the same for 1 to 2 people.
That's a lot of money for 300 square feet. I just want to let you know that. Okay. Thank you, and I'll reserve my questions for DPP after.
Okay, following Tupola, followed by Cordero.
Thank you. Mr. Sato, thank you for being here. I just wanted to follow up on that line of questioning from Councilmember Wire in regards to the relocation of individuals. So for 1538 Kapi'olani, it's going from commercial to commercial.
For 1538 Kapi'olani, it's commercial to residential. For 765 Amana, it's commercial to residential. And for 1564, it's residential to residential. Yeah.
And then for the commercial spaces, what is the timeline you guys are giving on them? And are they also, because I know that you guys said you're going to have some at 1538, some commercial spaces. How does that go as far as the relocation? I know for residential, you guys are going to talk with them, work with them, but I'm sure some of those guys have been renting commercially in those spaces for some time. Are they also going to be given options on continuing?
I want to ask Tim to help answer that question. Thank you.
Hi. For 1538, we actually are working with the existing tenants to come back.
Okay.
So in terms of the bank, we're in pretty deep discussions with them to return to the location. For Amana Street, we've been pretty transparent with them, and they've had notice. So they've had probably a good 2 years, maybe even longer than that, in terms of knowing that a conversion will happen on the property. So.
Yeah, Mana and Kalakaua I'm not as familiar with, but that 1538 Kapi'olani is a pretty iconic space right there on a main boulevard. So I'm glad you guys are going to work with them.
We're working with the tenants right now.
In regards to the statement that was made that you guys were going to offer the community benefits in, I don't know if you said in lieu of, but for some setback and some height allowances. So is that for all 3 projects that we're giving height allowances, for one of the projects, and where are the setback allowances?
Yeah, thank you for that question. So the TOD permit is for the main project site itself.
1538.
1538 Kapi'olani, that main site itself. So we're asking for the allowance to go up to the 400-foot height limit, as well as a density of 10.0 on that main project site. The encroachments, I mean, with a building that's higher than the original height, we will encroach into that setback there. The 2 offsite lots, the setback encroachment request, or that's not included in this application. That's a separate issue. The applicant is considering Chapter 32 for the offsite lot at 1564 Kalakaua, in particular to get the additional height and density under Chapter 32 there to maximize the affordable lots at that 1564 Kalakaua site.
And so the 1538 Kapi'olani that's going to go to the 400 and it's being allowed, what is the height that it was supposed to be at?
250 feet under the current LUL.
Oh, so it's quite larger.
Yes,
Okay. But on the surrounding buildings nearby, are they similar? Do some of them also have those allowances?
That's a really good question. I'm going to try to pull up the overall map really quickly. So in the main corridor of the Ala Moana TOD area, they, I don't have the full map here, but they do allow up to 400 feet, excuse me, and this is primarily around the area of the proposed future rail station. As you get farther away towards Malca, the maximum heights comes down a little bit there, and similarly, the maximum density in the TOD plan comes down from 10.0 down to 5.0, I believe. Our lot, as well as the strip along Kapiolani, the maximum allowable is 10.0 and 400 for all of our neighboring buildings. So if you look at some of the images in green, directly on the west of our project site is 1500 Kapiolani, and that was one of the earliest approved IPDT projects back in 2016, I believe. But that project had a density of 400 feet. I mean, a height, excuse me, of 400 feet there. The Azure project is right above on Keaumoku. That was the only completed IPDT project in the area, and again, that's 400 feet and 10.0 FAR.
And when you say the word 10.0, you're referring to what?
Oh, the floor area ratio.
Floor area ratio.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Okay, Councilmember Cordero.
Thank you, Chair Say. Hi, Mr. Sato. I was just regarding parking. And since you mentioned the 3 projects do have parking, how many more units would have been able to be built if there were no parking requirements?
That's a very good question, and I would need to look into that further. But just for parking requirements in the TOD and in the primary urban center, for lots of this zoning, the minimum requirement is 0, so there's no parking requirement for these lots. In the TOD plan, there are a few different tiers. So one thing the TOD plan mentions is 0 recommended stalls for retail and commercial, and a parking ratio of 1.25 for residential. So we're asking for a little bit above that parking ratio there to provide our stalls.
Okay, so how much space does parking take up, and in comparison to units by, I guess, floor or so?
I would have to look into that a little bit further, but there are standard parking stall dimensions that we have to meet a minimum with. Of course, with parking garages, you also need an access aisle that will need a minimum with as well. For the specific trade-off, I would need to look into that a little bit further. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I guess I know that we keep talking about parking and parking requirements, but with it being so close to the rail stations, of course, and I think I've said this with other projects, that I would like to see very minimum parking. I know that people love parking, but I personally would like to see more units in place of parking, and that's just for me. And I know other people do not agree, so that's why I made that comment. And then my next question is, when it goes from commercial to residential, what are we doing about assisting? I know we're assisting residents, but how about the current commercial units that are not units, but commercial tenants, thank you, that are there now?
No, that's a very good question. I'm going to ask Tim to assist with the answer. Tim, maybe you should sit in the front row. But anyway, before that, Councilmember Cordero, we do believe that the parking that we provide or we're proposing on our site is what's needed for the project. In earlier revisions of the project, we had over 500 parking stalls, and when in early meetings with DPP, we understood or we listened to their concerns about the number of parking stalls, and we brought it down to 466. It is still about 50 stalls above the what's in the TOD plan, but we're hoping that this is a good in-between that works for everyone. And in addition to that, I just want to mention that we are helping to provide wide sidewalks, bike share, car share, so we really hope to support the TOD in the area.
Mr. Sato, relating to the parking, so what is the requirement? You said it's 50 above, so what is the requirement for this?
So the requirement in the TOD plan is 0 retail commercial and 1.25 ratio for residential, which would come out to 414 vehicle stalls there. So we're at 466.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, next we have Councilmember DeSantos Tan.
Wait. Sorry. Mr. Lee has to answer my question. I'm so sorry.
Okay, please,
Hi.
Mr. Lee.
So in terms of commercial tenants, as I mentioned, we're in discussions with the existing tenants at 1538 to bring them back. Amana Street, we've been really transparent with them. So they've known that a redevelopment or repurpose to a residential building is going to happen. So they've had over 2 years of notice. And a lot of the tenants at Amana are, from my understanding, a lot of them are retiring. A lot of the tenants have been there for a very long time. So, but we have been pretty open in terms of dates and giving them a lot of notice. So.
Okay, thank you. And does the Amana property have to be rezoned for residential?
It's actually AMX zone.
Okay, got it.
So.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. Moving on to Councilmember DeSantos Tan.
Thank you, Chair. This is the first time that we're considering off-site units, and so I think that this is a really healthy discussion to have because this certainly won't be the last time that we look at off-site units. I do have a few questions about the affordable housing unit specifically and then the project overall. So I'll start with the affordable housing ones. I appreciate that all 36 of the additional units are going to be 80% AMI for 30 years, which is an important commitment. For the existing office building on Amana Street, I wanted to ask if there are any building code issues that are an impediment to the conversion of that office building to residential. We're working on a lot of these downtown projects that are running into these issues. What's your experience been?
Thank you, Councilmember Dos Santos Tam. That's a really good question because, as you see in downtown, we see a lot more commercial to residential conversions there. And sometimes there's positives and sometimes there's negatives. Some positives, like we mentioned to Councilmember Kiaina, is that a lot of times we have existing very high ceilings, in these office spaces. So the residential units will have these high ceilings. Some of the challenges are a lot of times there's existing columns in places that wouldn't normally be spaced that way in a residential building. There's existing walls. There's less requirements in office building for lighting and ventilation. One of the things the developer has agreed to for this project was to ensure that we meet all of the lighting and ventilation, the natural lighting and ventilation. So along Amana Street, it's primarily a blank wall, which is a concrete wall, and they're going to be punching holes through that wall to allow windows into all of the rental units. So there are challenges. Luckily, with our project site, we're able to work through them to get good units there, but sometimes the layout of the columns also limits the floor area. Sometimes we have some small units, some large units, so that does always affect our conversion projects.
Glad to hear that. In the DPP report, it mentions that there appears to be adequate school capacity, but more consultation needs to be done with DOE. Have you guys done that consultation? Do we have more specific analyses about the school capacity for, say Washington or McKinley, or I think it's Kahumanu Elementary?
Yes, that's correct. So prior to our application, we reached out to DOE, the facilities branch, and we provided them our proposed residential unit counts, which would be attending those schools you mentioned, Councilmember, and they did confirm capacity up to 2027 in their projections there. And I believe their projections, they try to look at the full area and other developments in the area as well. So we do anticipate to have capacity with DOE, but again, we'll have to continue to work with them.
Good. Is there any requirement for the affordable housing to open at the same time as the tower? I want to get that crystal clear on the record.
Yes, that's a very good question. So in the proposed CD1, item G1, there is a condition that says, regarding to the affordable housing requirement, compliance with this must be confirmed prior to the certificate of occupancy for the main tower. So the two offsite affordable rental buildings will need to be developed prior to tenants moving into the 1538 Kapiolani site.
Good. Okay, I have three project kind of overall questions. On page 20 of the DPP report, it talks about the driveway and whether that's an acceptable or insufficient benefit and recommended adjustments. Since the DPP report came out, have there been any adjustments made to the driveway to maybe increase how DPP feels about the public benefit of the driveway?
We haven't made adjustments to our driveway yet, but we anticipate to make adjustments to our ground floor plan in general to address some of DPP's comments. I mean, one is the bike share stalls, so we want to make sure we have space for those stalls. Another one is the short-term bicycle stalls on the second floor. We got to find room for that on the first floor. So we will be taking another look at our ground floor plan for the following special district permit, which would come after this resolution. But in the current state on the driveway, we haven't made any changes yet.
Yeah, and then I note that there's a cash contribution for neighborhood pedestrian improvements. Do you have specific projects in mind, or has DTS approached you with specific projects, or even conceptually?
Yeah, so there's, as you know, at the city, there's the Oahu pedestrian plan, the Oahu bike plan. So they do identify projects in the vicinity of all three project sites there. So we intend to give the money to DTS or to the city to help determine what projects they see fit and to see the best fit for the funds there. But we hope that the contribution will go towards TOD improvements and TOD objectives there in the vicinity.
Yeah. And then last one, I'm glad that there's a TIAR for the Kalakaua property. That area is pretty congested already. For Amana Street, just want to get crystal clear again on the record. Has the impact of that, office to residential conversion, has that been factored in? Has that been studied extensively?
So in our initial traffic study, we discussed the 1538 Kapiolani and the 765 Amana Street buildings. So we had both of those in the initial traffic study. We acquired the 1564 Kalakaua site a little bit later. After discussing with DPP, we were able to purchase the lot. So that's kind of a newer purchase for us. So we didn't have the chance to do the full traffic assessments yet, but it is a condition, and we anticipate to do the traffic impact analysis report for that site as well.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for those questions. Chair Waters.
Thank you very much. Good morning. Let's talk about 1538 Kapiolani first. So currently, the height limit there is 250 feet, right?
Yes, that's correct.
And under the TOD plan, you're allowed to go up to 400 feet, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, so that's an additional 150 feet.
Correct.
And in exchange for the additional height, what's required is commensurate community benefits, right?
Correct.
Okay, so this extra 150 feet. Oh, well, also we're talking about FAR. You're asking for a 10 FAR, right?
Correct.
And what's the current FAR?
A 2.5.
What's currently allowed is a 2.5, and what's currently there looks more like a 1, right? That's CPB building. Well, the building where CBB is currently located.
Yeah, that's likely correct.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a one-story building. Okay, so you're going to go from a one-story building to a 40-story building, right? So an additional 15 stories. How many more units are you able to get in those additional 15 stories?
I'll need to look at our floor plate to see about how many units we have per floor, but I would guess that it's about 150 more units. But I would have to take a closer look to get a better number.
Okay, yeah, if you can, at a later time, get back to us. And we could probably figure it out by just looking at the floor plan and multiplying it, but I'm sure you're mixing in the 2 and 3 in bedrooms and whatnot. Okay, so that's quite a bit, right? I mean, it's kind of a good thing, this whole TOD plan where we want to encourage development. So that's why we're giving an extra height and density and a 10. So we're all on the same page, a 10 FAR. That's extremely significant, right?
Yes, that's correct.
I mean, even a 7 FAR would be very generous, but a 10 is, is there anything higher than a 10? Can you get, eke out, a 13 FAR at a site like this? Probably not, right?
Yeah, 10 is the max allowable under the Ala Moana TOD plan, and it's typically the max we see in the state in general.
Yeah, and thank you. And I know Tim went through the studios, 1 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms, 3 bedrooms, and their market rate on the 1538 Kapiolani Boulevard Tower. But what are we talking about when we say market rate? How much is that 3-bedroom gonna cost a local person to buy? Not AMI wise, let's talk dollar wise.
1538, 3-bedroom. We'll get back to you on that dollar amount. I think it's roughly, for that 3-bedroom unit,
More or less than $1 million.
more or less,
More than $1 million probably,
yeah,
right?
yeah, more than $1 million.
Yeah. And how much is the 2-bedrooms gonna cost?
I think
Just
the
slightly under
two-bedrooms
$2 million?
will start around maybe $800,000 to $900,000.
Okay.
I assume.
And then the 1-bedroom, and how much is the studio gonna cost?
Studios will probably start in the high fours.
High fours. How big are those studios?
The studios are about high 300s. They start 380 square feet.
Okay.
Yeah. Some are a little larger.
Okay, great. Moving to 1564 Kalakaua. That currently is a 2-story building, right? Next to, is that by Manuheali'i, the Aloha shirt?
Yes, it's nearby Manuheali'i. So on Kalakaua Street, there's the Makiki Stream, right on Kalakaua, then our site, and Puno Street is right on the front side. So we're right in between those two.
Are you able to access the property from Kalakaua?
No, the project site is accessed from Puno Street. There's no, some of those houses have driveway crossings. Our lot doesn't.
That's right where that culvert is, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay,
That's correct.
understood. And the current building there is a 2-story building with, looks like 6 apartment units.
Yeah, and it's current condition, 6 units.
By the way, is this in the TOD area?
Yes, it is. So the TOD boundary is along Puno Street at that portion, so right next to the site.
So since it's in the TOD, you could actually go 400 feet right here too, right?
So in the TOD plan, using the rail station as a core, in general, the height limit is at 400 feet, and then it kind of narrows down
That's right.
away from there. So we wouldn't be able to go to 400 feet under the TOD plan.
What's allowable under the TOD plan?
I believe this is outside of that core area, so there is no community benefit bonus in this specific location.
Right, but I guess I could ask DPP what the current height limit is for that portion of the TOD area. Because I'm curious, I mean, maybe this is a TOD question, because if we want to maximize the affordable housing units built, excuse me, and we're willing, I think, to give you more height and density if you build more affordables. I think that's why it's important to figure that out on this Kalakaua property. Although looking at the neighbors, there's, on Phillip Street, there looks like maybe a 10-story building. But everywhere else around there is kind of like the same building that's currently there, 1 or 2 stories. Do you think if we were to give you more height and density on this parcel, you could build more affordable units?
So through the TOD plan, we're unable to, as you mentioned, build additional affordable units at that lot. We are looking at going through Chapter 32, which is previously Bill 7, approved by Council to help maximize the unit count, which is where we're able to get that 37 unit there. For building more units, I'd have to talk to the developer.
Are you able to couple, I'm just curious, you got the LIHTC financing and the affordable housing projects, HHFDC, a lot of what we've been seeing, a lot of these projects coming through with High Ridge Costa and Stanford Carr and whatnot. Are you able to blend the two? If you're going to build more affordable housing on off-site, can you blend the financing so that you could build more? Because right now, what we're doing is, I mean, we're going to talk about community benefits in a minute, but the community benefit that I think people really want is more affordable housing. Bike path is nice sidewalks, that's nice too. But really, if we could build more affordable housing and then tell us how we can help you do it. This may or may not be the site to do it on, but Can you blend LIHTC financing and other financing with these TOD projects?
Our project is not blending the LIHTC.
Because it's, this is a perfect opportunity because it's a separate building, right? I think they're doing one, and we could talk to DPP about it. I think they're doing the same thing downtown on Pohukaina Street, right? You got one market rate building and then one affordable building, and they're using the financing to do that. You got a perfect opportunity to do this here.
That's a really good point, and I think we'll definitely circle back with you as well as DPP to look at our potential options there.
Okay.
Pohukaina in HCDA, they do have significantly different rules than DPP in general. A lot of times over there you see full buildings, a full offsite affordable tower, and then a full market tower, and they have their own credit system in place to build, one at a time. And our current project, we're bunching them together to put them together. But I think that's a really good point, and it's definitely worth exploring more.
Under this current project, you're not taking advantage of any of those financing options through HHFDC, right? You're doing it all in-house.
Yeah, privately funded.
Privately funded. Okay. Can I talk to DPP for a minute? I see you shaking your head no.
Aloha, Chair. I would like to just clarify. So the off-site affordable housing, they're basically, they mentioned Chapter 32 projects, that's Bill 7. So they will be able to take advantage of the grants under Bill 1 and probably GET exemptions. But those off-site affordable units are part of the community benefits that we're receiving in order for them to get these this flexibility in heights and density.
So they are taking advantage of one of the city's affordable housing benefit.
Yes, they would be taking advantage of Bill 7 and Bill 1.
And now we're giving them then, is it $9,000 per unit?
Something to that effect, yes.
Right. Okay, and plus you don't have to have an elevator in this building, right, under Bill 7?
I think generally not, but I would have to look at the specifics of their design.
Is there going to be an elevator in there? Okay, we got an elevator. Good. But that's okay. And under Bill 7, you can build closer to the street, right? You don't need to have the setback.
Right, there's more flexibility for those types of projects.
What's the height limit on this Kalakaua property currently, and what how high can we go there? I think it's 6 stories, right? So 60 feet is what they want to build.
Mm-hmm.
Can they go higher than that under current rules and ordinance?
I will have Jordan Dildy, our planner, who knows more of the specifics, speak about some of those questions.
Hi, morning. Jordan Dildy, staff planner, DPP.
Hi, Jordan.
So the current height limit would be 150 feet in this area, but under Bill 7 or Chapter 32, they would be restricted to 60 feet because that's a requirement of Chapter 32.
Oh, okay. Thank you. That's so interesting. How about go 150 feet?
If they were trying to build under the current zoning, they would then encroach into the height setbacks. So they couldn't go up to the 150 feet because they would then encroach into the height setbacks.
Maybe that's where we got to fix Bill 7 to allow taller buildings. Okay, so I get it. What you're saying then is you couldn't go 150 feet on this parcel if you have to abide by the normal setbacks.
Correct.
Can we, under this resolution, waive the current setbacks and allow them to go to 150 feet? I think we can.
Under the IPDT, because it's specifically for the 1538 project or the main site, I think it would be difficult to then exempt another site or exempt zoning requirements on another site because this is as a community benefit. It's not the project site itself.
But we're trying to maximize the community benefit, and that is, again, building more affordable housing. I guess the real legal question is, can you do it in this document, right? In Resolution 23-118. And by the way, the developers aren't necessarily agreeing to this because I can imagine they want to take advantage of the benefits from Bill 7. But legally, maybe we can get Corp Counsel to come in and answer that question, if at all possible. Or Liz. Liz is just as smart as Corp Counsel in my mind.
Right. So the offsite sites, they're not contiguous with the main project site, so it wouldn't be able to be processed under the same IPDT or for the exemptions.
I see.
It would have to be a new application.
But we're processing it now. How can you say it's not able to process? We're literally processing it now. We're approving it.
For the exemptions. These other sites are being provided as community benefits.
So who
themselves.
negotiated the community benefits? Just curious, like car share, bike share, street improvements. Like, do you do that in your office? Are you in charge of that?
We do look at the application to find commensurate community benefits, yes.
I mean, if we want to build as much, by the way, when we're talking about 80% AMI, like how much money is that in real terms for people watching on TV? If you make 80% AMI, what are you earning a year? That's like $80,000, $90,000.
Mr. Chair, with your indulgence, we have Chair Wire, Councilmember Kiaina. Would you folks want us to move on to DPP so they can explain?
He is from DPP.
No,
Oh, no. Yeah, he
DPP's
is.
presentation. They have a presentation to make on this project.
Oh, they do?
Yes,
Okay, yeah, that's
but
fine. I
you can
wait.
say, you can respond to Chair Waters' question at this point, but we can have them, and then you can open up to discussion.
Okay, great.
All right, okay, thank you. Wait, am I answering another question? Sorry.
No, we can just go on to the presentation from DPP. That's fine.
Okay, why don't we do that?
Okay,
Right?
thank
Then we
you.
can ask the questions. So is there any further questions for the applicant at this point in time, but we will be calling them back later? Okay, Councilmember Wire.
And just to clarify a few things, so coming back to the rental amounts we discussed earlier, as set by the 80% AMI limit, you said utilities were included in that rent cap? Was that?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah,
Okay.
utilities, water, sewer, electricity.
Okay. And is there a cap on the utility usage? So like a resident would only have to pay a certain amount or not pay a certain amount, and if they exceed that, then they have to pay the excess or anything like that?
I just checked with the developer. The answer is no.
Okay, so the rental amount that you mentioned includes all utilities, so electricity, water, sewer.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, whereas a typical market rate rental would typically, oftentimes those would be borne by the unit occupant or tenant.
It depends. A lot of times electricity is always borne by the unit. Sometimes they keep the water in the association, but some new places keep it separate, so
Yeah.
they have sub-meters. But
Yeah, no, exactly. Yeah, I think really helpful given that, the price of electricity is really volatile right now. So that's helpful. And then coming back to what you said earlier about the 80% AMI. So the state, the city have those limits. Is your understanding that that's set by the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development?
yes, that's correct. And DPP uses those as a base, and they come out with updates annually.
Okay, so these amounts aren't arbitrarily set by developers or any entity. They're a part of a much larger affordable housing framework that's used across the country.
Yeah, so the city, the city sets their amount for all the affordable housing projects that they regulate there. And again, that's based off, they can speak more to it, but that's based off the national standard.
Okay, and then just so we're all on the same page, it was mentioned earlier that this is the first time we've done offsite community benefits as offsite affordable rentals. But is it your understanding, and this may be a DPP question, but that this is a typical potential community benefit to have off-site units that are affordable as a part of the community benefits package?
Yeah, that's a good point. I believe there was one project in the past that had an offsite rental as a community benefit. We're the first project that's actually acquired the lots. A lot of those were thrown in. They didn't have a specific location in the TOD. The developer went out of their way to make sure they could commit to these lots and commit to this number. So they purchased the lots ahead of time. And for the 23.5 affordable rental units there.
And I don't know if DPP wants to add to that, but I just wanted to clarify so it's clear that it's a part of the intended process and plan on providing affordable housing, particularly in TOD, and not necessarily a unique benefit to any particular developer or project.
Yeah. So, thank you, Liz.
Elizabeth Krieger, DPP. Yes, it is an option. This particular provision about whether affordable housing needed to be on-site or off-site has morphed a little bit through time. There used to be percentages of affordability that needed to be on-site versus off-site and that kind of thing, but it was refined by the City Council in about, I think, 2018 or 2019 to provide that affordable housing could be provided off-site as long as it's within the same neighborhood TOD area. So for the Ala Moana TOD neighborhood plan, it's only the Ala Moana plan area. But say in downtown, that covers the downtown station, the Chinatown station, and the Iwilei station, I believe. So affordable housing could be off-site in any of those station areas.
Okay, mahalo, Ms. Krieger. Appreciate that. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, why don't we proceed on with the Department of Planning and Permitting, the Director, Apuna.
Thank you, Chair. So DPP is supportive of the project, but we do have concerns similar to what some of the council members have mentioned in terms of the number of affordable units and then the height setback. I would also add, I understand what Liz is saying, what the council did at some point, but I think ideally you would want affordable housing units within the project itself rather than segregating it out at other areas. Also, when we look at community benefits, we try to look at them case by case. It's not so much a comparison of other projects, but what that specific project is about and its particular location, et cetera, et cetera. Other than that, I do have staff here. I have Jordan Dildy, who spoke earlier, who's working on this project itself, and Tim Straits, our TOD chief right now. So they are available for questions as well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, Chair Waters, your questions for DPP.
I'll defer to the other members first.
Okay. And if you have a question, okay, go right ahead, Councilmember Kiaina, followed by DeSantos Tam.
Thank you, Director. Let's talk about valuations first. There have only been 2 other IPDT projects to come before us while I have been here. Can you help me understand how does DPP value the height, density, and setback flexibilities being requested?
So I'll have Jordan speak to those specifics.
All right, so when we're talking about community benefits in terms of height and density bonuses, it's honestly, it is hard to put a standard to it or to calculate it, but typically we'll look at like the cost per square foot, and in terms of community benefits, the cost evaluation for things that they're providing, such as car share stalls or bicycle parking spaces. But the short and quick answer to that is there's no standard for the evaluation. That's why each site has to be taken case by case. And then we're also looking at what kind of the community wants or needs at that specific time to help with the community benefits.
Okay, thank you. And as a follow-up, how did you calculate the value the community will receive from the 36 units being offered as a community benefit in exchange for the LUO flexibilities? would the value of the units be different if they were in the same building?
So I think we would take that into consideration if the units were in the same building. But as far as how we calculated the 36 units as they're proposed right now as off-site, we pretty much looked at the kind of the cost per square foot for the additional 150 feet in height plus the extra 301,000 square feet of density that they get.
How does this project compare with other IPDT TOD permits in terms of the height, density, and other flexibilities approved and the community benefits that are being provided?
So in comparison to others, in terms of what they're asking for, it's pretty similar to the other IPDTs because they usually try to max out their available height and density. So that's pretty standard across the board. And in terms of height setbacks, or encroaching into the height setbacks and encroaching into or providing like more parking spaces than what's required, it's usually, it's more like we're looking at the valuation of, what are we looking at? Sorry, one second. Certainly at the valuation of other community benefits that they're providing. So for example, one approved IPDT was the park at Keamoku, where they provided a 40,000 square foot open space park that was a community benefit, which adds to that exemption from like height setbacks. But typically we would look at affordable housing first for the height and density increases. So that's what we'll look at first, and then any other exemptions after that will take into consideration, I guess, other community benefits such as the car share or bicycle parking.
Sure. I understand that the CD1 would allow the developer to encroach into the 20 feet above the ground height setback for the parking podium and allow the construction of 466 parking stalls instead of 414. How much is that flexibility worth?
In terms of like visual value or visual impact from the street, it is very important because providing a good human scale along Kapiolani and the street is what we would want along that boulevard. And in terms of them encroaching into the setback for the parking podium, one thing that we consider is the landscaping. So like the monkey pod trees are a very important part of Kapiolani Boulevard, and we want to make sure that they have enough room to grow and thrive in that area. And we're talking about parking.
Absolutely. Mr. Chair, can I have a few more questions. Is that okay? Or you want to rotate?
Nope, go right ahead.
Wanted to follow up on Bill 7. I understand that, you know, it provides for height density and setbacks flexibilities, but with regard to the two off-site apartment buildings, would they qualify for all the flexibilities and grants under ROH Chapter 23? For example, property tax, apart from grants, for example, if they can qualify for, do they get property tax savings or fee waivers?
That I would have to double check, but from what they're proposing, if they're going to be at 80% AMI for 30 years, it's most likely that they would be granted the exemptions under Chapter 32.
Does their ability to receive flexibilities or other benefits under Chapter 32 change how we value the 36 units?
That's a good question. It does kind of affect how we would look at the community benefits, because in that case they are getting greater tax exemptions or fee waivers for a community benefit towards another project. So we do take that into consideration, but also we understand the need for affordable housing, and that was a ordinance approved by council to help provide affordable housing. So
Okay, and the last on this, Bill 7, will the developer be able to deliver on the 101 units without the flexibilities under Chapter 32?
that would be unlikely depending on, it really depends on how they break down the units in the 1564 Kalakaua site, because the Chapter 32 exemptions allows them to go up to a 4 FAR for the density. And I believe currently they would only be at a 2.5. So it does give them more density.
Okay, and my last issue, it has to do with the long-term sustainability of off-site affordable rentals. While I understand that the law allows developers to fulfill affordable housing requirements with off-site units, I just wanted to share that I generally prefer on-site affordable housing. Data shows that mixed income projects have substantial social benefits, including increasing economic and education mobility of lower income families and higher quality housing. Also, inclusion of units targeted lower income households with the market rate property ensures that the kuleana to sustain the affordable units remains with the owner of the market rate property. That said, I understand there are particular challenges when integrating rentals with for-sale units, and I wanted to note that the developer did not have to do rentals, so mahalo for them for that. And mahalo to DPP for your recommendations to require all the affordable units to be set at rents affordable to households earning 80% AMI or less for 30 years. My question is, with this raised in our meeting with, we raised this in a meeting with the developer yesterday, but for the record, for DPP, is there anything in the permit or conditions that would prevent the property owner from selling the off-site affordable rental unit properties? If yes, does it make sense to add deed restrictions or covenants on the main property to ensure sustainability of the off-site units?
I believe the affordable units would be covered under the affordable housing rules, which does have limitations on when they can be sold. So I believe the affordable housing rules would take care of them selling it before the affordability period is over.
But what's your mana'o on deed restrictions or covenants on the main property?
So the resolution itself for the IPDT would function in that way, as where they would have to abide by the conditions in the resolution. So the 80% AMI for 30 years is covered in that resolution, so they would have to comply with that in general. So there would be no need for a deed restriction.
Okay, so if they were to sell the off-site property, they would still have to be in, they'd have to have it in the market for 30 years, correct?
Correct.
Including the new buyer,
Yes.
at the same rates?
Yes, at the 80% AMI.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
correct.
thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember DeSantis Tam, followed by Tupola.
Thank you. In DPP's report from April, again, I wanted to ask about this driveway, which was noted by DPP as an unacceptable or insufficient community benefit. And I understand that there currently, aren't major passageways between Makaloa and Kapiolani Boulevard. What sorts of elements would make it more of a community benefit in the sort of TOD context in DPP's estimation?
Okay, so what would make this driveway a more commensurate community benefit? I don't want to say that it's not a benefit, because it is. Having a drive-through or pass-through to Kapiolani or Makaloa is a benefit, but it is not just a benefit for the community. In that plan, they have their loading spaces, loading stalls. That's access for their loading stalls as well. It's not a community benefit in terms of it being open space, like open space to the public, as well as their car share stalls and some retail parking spaces are on that ground floor in that pedestrian vehicle pass-through area.
So in DPP's report, it mentions that the driveway may not be accessible at all hours of the day. How would they restrict passage, say, very early in the morning or very late at night?
So how would the developer restrict access?
Yeah, because I guess in DPP's analysis, the department's concerned about public access not being available at all times, but
Right.
I don't see a gate or anything. I'm just trying to understand, really, because this was flagged as something that was insufficient, and I just want to understand all the dimensions of it as we talk about it.
Right, so you're correct, there's no gate or anything like that, but it's more like moving people out the property or restricting them from access to the property in terms of like a security guard, or from like the commercial retail space having a security guard not wanting people there trespassing at night, even though they just want to pass through or walk through the area.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Tupola.
Thank you. Just a few follow-up questions, because I think from what we've heard today, there's been a lot of we're concerned, but clearly in here it states that this is not to be counted as a community benefit. So I hear what you're saying, oh, it is, but then in here it says it is not a community benefit. And it says here, the community benefits are not commensurate with the requested bonuses, but they could be if these adjustments are made. And then they outline 5 adjustments. So in the current proposal, does it account for these 5 adjustments that you suggested?
So in the current, when you say proposal, the CD1 or the?
Yes.
Okay.
So in what we're discussing right now is standards for review 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 that was said, if these were implemented, then it would comply with the community benefit. Is that currently in this proposal?
So those adjustments are in the proposal. However, our recommendation had the condition where they would not be able to encroach into the Kapiolani height setback, and they would have to provide less parking. So those 2 conditions have been removed in the CD1. So as of right now, it is not commensurate.
So you're saying that your suggestion was less parking and not into the 400-foot, stay at the 250?
Or, sorry, to not encroach into the height setback along Kapiolani Boulevard, which is the 20-foot setback above the ground floor.
But you're saying that that was taken out in CD1, so therefore the department does not support CD1?
Correct.
Okay, just clarifying that, because it was kind of, we're concerned. You're saying we don't support CD1, because as I read through page 20 and 21, it's pretty clear what you guys are saying. Please do these 5 things, and then this would be more of a community benefit, and therefore will equal the, I guess, what Councilmember Kiaina was saying, equal the valuation amount of what a benefit would look like.
Correct.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair.
You're welcome. Any further discussion, Chair Waters?
Thank you, Chair Say. Going back to what Councilmember Kiaina was talking about, as well as my previous line of questioning dealing with commensurate community benefits. So just doing the math. So if the project is providing 101 affordable units at 80% AMI, and that's going to cost $37 million. So the developer is paying approximately $366,333 per unit, which is not a bad price, right, for affordable units. But under Chapter 32, taxpayers will be paying $909,000 to the developer, right? So like we're helping pay for this. Taxpayers are, I mean, right? In the tune of almost $1 million. When really the idea here is to get, in order to get that bonus height of 400 feet, an additional 15 stories, the developer is supposed to be giving something back to the community, right? Isn't that the basic idea?
Correct, yes.
Okay, and I did mention earlier that, heck, if we can help build more affordable units, that something like that I think would be more palatable, right? But don't build the minimum amount of units, build more than the minimum, especially if taxpayers are going to give you almost $1 million, plus allow you to waive setbacks and other things like that, parking requirements. So what's the parking going to look like on Kalakaua? They're not required to do any parking under Bill 7 and Chapter 32. Is there going to be any parking for the affordable units?
I believe there will be parking, and then the number of parking stalls, I would have to have the applicant kind of confirm that, but there will be parking spaces, and I believe there would be bicycle,
Parking.
bike
Yeah.
share.
Which again, I get the whole idea behind Chapter 32 and Bill 7 was to get people out of their cars. We're going to help the developer build. But I mean, if we're talking like if you're going to provide 2 parking spaces on the market rate unit, why not provide 2 parking spaces on the affordable unit? Just fair, right? Why are we taking advantage of the poor people who cannot afford a marketplace unit? And by the way, I shouldn't say that poor people, but people who are struggling to get by. It should be equal, right?
Yes, for equality, yes.
Yeah. And then, so I'm looking at them and commensurate, right? I mean, just the basic definition of commensurate is like equal to. So if Amana Street is 5 stories, Kalakaua is 6 stories, that's 11 stories, but we're giving them 15 stories. That's not commensurate, right? I mean, that's what I was asking. Who negotiates this? I'm just curious. And by the way, Liz, you should be up here. We don't want to give the new guy a hard time. By the way, you're doing great, and thank you for testifying, and we don't mean to give you a hard time. But Liz knows I've given her a hard time for the past 3 years. But, right, I mean, they're providing 11 stories of affordables, but we're giving them 50 at market rate. And by the way, 15 stories, those are the higher stories. The view's going to be nice. You can sell these units for over $1 million. And by the way, developers, I don't mean to give you guys a hard time. It's good to have this kind of discussion, right, to get it out there. And I know it's really hard. I've heard developers saying all the time, it doesn't pencil out, right? But that's where, you got to educate us. Tell us how it doesn't pencil out, right? There's another word that I learned, IRR. Actually, Tim Lee taught me that, internal rate of return. What is the internal rate of return on this building? That's pure profit. You guys don't like say, I know. Nobody's standing up.
Would you like to ask the developer up to answer that question?
As members of the committee, are you folks interested in that? If nobody's interested in that, I mean. And do you make, well, I'll start with this. Are you going to make money on the affordables? Right? Because
we don't turn a profit on the affordable. We're holding that. We don't turn a profit on the affordables for a number of years, a good 5 to 10 years, right? So there is no profit on the affordables. It's with today's financing costs and construction costs, it's challenging, right? And one thing to note, I know we circulated this to a few of the council members, but to date, out of the 8 IPDT projects that have been approved, we are offering the highest percentage. The average to date for the 8 projects that have been approved has been under 15%, 14.8%. 1538, we're providing 23.4% in terms of an affordable housing count. So if we will circulate this again, but we really did want to put our best foot forward, and so we are at a fairly high percentage. If you compare us to, for instance, Park on Keomoko, I believe Park on Keomoko is right around 14%. Azure was at 18%. We're at 23.4%. Some of the other projects are significantly lower than that. So in terms of, you asked in terms of returns for this project, we're a private company. We're not we're not a publicly traded company where we're shooting for the moon. And so I think we've had this discussion in the past. We take a more aggressive approach. We really truly do love what we do, the guys in my team, and so we're not shooting for the moon.
By the way, that hasn't gone unnoticed, right? That is over 23% affordable. Yeah. So I appreciate that very much, and I do recognize that other projects weren't building as much as you folks are. But at the same time, if we can help you, make even more affordable units, because ultimately I think that's what people want. And it's unfortunate, it's just the way it works, that when we are approving these higher heights and densities, we're looking at community benefits. But anyway, thank you, Chair.
Any further questions? Okay, Isaiah, yes. Mr.
Yeah,
Santos.
thank you, Chair Waters. I just wanted to clarify, after speaking with Jordan on the side, we wanted to clarify the affordables. We are providing 23.5, but the projects over time are extremely varied in location, as well as in the affordable housing rules. There's different requirements on a for sale affordable housing requirement, for rent. If it's for sale, restricted to 5 years, restricted to 30 years, there's different percentage ratios, but we and the developer are very committed to these projects, and we do believe in rentals for these projects are the right move. And I have to give props to Tim them, because as a rental, they're staying here. They're invested in the community. They may not get a return for many years at a time, so they're really invested into these projects.
Right, but other projects that took advantage of, well, I'm not sure if taking advantage is the right term, but where we approved for sale units, right, at 30 years, that didn't pencil out, right? When you had to build for sale units, but they had to be affordable for 30 years, right? 10% of the project had to be affordable for 30 years. You guys told me yourselves that didn't work out. And in fact, you want to switch from for sale to rental. So I get it. And you're right. Rentals in this instance probably is the right way to do it. And we do have a need for rentals, so that's not a problem. But, I mean, it would be nice if you folks did 20% at market rate, at affordable, without that 30-year requirement. But that's something else we can look at later, but I appreciate that. Thank you.
Any further discussion? The chair would like to say a few words. First, maybe for Liz. The thought for the chair, as far as coming up with the committee draft 1, was to really try to get some feedback from the department as far as what you would request the council to consider. That's number 1. It's just a start, because we'll have another public hearing on this particular committee draft 1, and I think that for the developer, Mr. Lee, you've heard it all as far as what the council members want: more affordable housing, rentals. I think Councilperson Kiana brought up a very good point that, yeah, I always didn't like off-site affordable housing projects to accommodate their requirements. Maybe that's the way I was brought up. But I just wanted to get your thoughts about what is happening today, which really concerns me, because I don't know. I'll be very honest with all of you in the audience. We have a planned transit development project for 1538, and then we have the overall, what is the Ala Moana Neighborhood Board transit-oriented development plan. And maybe, Tim, if you could share a few words, because you've taken over for Harrison, right? And just the projects within this TOD, what should have come first? The TOD as far as the overall master plan, or will it be individual private property owners coming up with their projects? Your thoughts? Because we're going through a lot as far as, for example, the FARs. I didn't know this, for the transit-oriented development plans, you had the 40%, or excuse me, for the area ratio, that kind of stuff. Area ratio, which basically addresses, this is my personal feeling, the density. And then I learned something this morning also about the higher you go, the farther in setback you have to have. And that's another zoning issue that we have to think about. But I don't know what our predecessors were planning for. And maybe Tim would know if he's representing the TOD side. But our zoning sides, I just want to keep it simple. But just your thoughts, please.
Sure. To give a little history on how the IPDT process came about. In around 2014, developers were looking at the Kapiolani area, the Ala Moana area, and saying, we're ready to be building TOD-style projects. There isn't anything that allows us to do so yet. So it was called interim in part because at that point, the Ala Moana TOD neighborhood plan hadn't even been drafted yet. So we pegged everything based on existing LUO allowances and allowed, originally the idea was to double density to go from 3.5 to 7. Eventually, when the Ala Moana TOD plan draft became available, they were going to 10 FAR, 400 feet in certain corridors. And then the Ala Moana TOD plan was repeatedly reviewed by the city council and say the 400-foot area continued up Keamoku where it hadn't previously and that kind of thing. So all of that occurred. That was a very iterative process. But again, philosophically, the idea was to be ready for rail by creating ridership, especially at the terminus of the rail, so that there would be a lot of housing units, a lot of people that would take advantage of rail in those immediate areas. And it was also really important to remember that the city and county was investing in this major infrastructure project, and that those zone change, the zone change and additional density and height benefits that would accrue to those landowners would be mitigated, right? So that they would be captured as benefits to the community who was taking on this additional, you could call it burden of additional height and density. And that's where the community benefits to mitigate those impacts were envisioned, and specifically the number one community benefit was affordable housing, because it doubled down on this idea of housing that would create ridership for those rail areas. So that was how the IPDT was created in the first place. Over the last almost 10 years now, every single IPDT has occurred in this neighborhood. And also it's important to note that in certain situations, developers have chosen the 201H process if they're providing 51% affordable. So there are a couple of projects in here that are very tall and very dense that went through HHFDC for a 201H.
So, that's the whole point, Liz. Why the activity just around a place where the rail may not occur for another 10 years? I'll be honest. Any thoughts? I thought maybe it would start off in Waipahu. Or, no, but I'm talking about infrastructure for housing. I just don't want to be, I'll just say that adjective or that word they use. We're just spot zoning, have this project here, this project, without thinking it through overall master plan.
Oh, I believe that the TOD neighborhood TOD plans were master planned ideas, and I'll turn it over to Tim to talk about philosophically how those plans came about.
Thanks, Liz. Tim Streitz, acting TOD administrator with DPP. Just a quick point of clarification. So transit-oriented development is not just revolving around rail stations, although that's where we focused because of the significant investment that's occurred with the rail transit system, but it can be anywhere where there's high-frequency transit. So Ala Moana is a perfect example. You have Kapiolani Boulevard, King Street, which have frequent bus routes, and so that neighborhood is actually fairly unique among all the TOD designated areas through our TOD plan so far, because it's already fairly transportation balanced, meaning that you don't have to rely on a car. There's other ways to get around. It's fairly dense currently, so you can walk around, you can bike. There's more infrastructure in planning right now for complete streets on Keamoku that'll make it further bikeable. And so it's I guess something to consider. And Whereas the plan, and I think what you're considering with the CD1 and the 20-foot high setback, the kind of the fundamental element of zoning is to balance uses and density. And so the TOD plan, which for Ala Moana, which went through various community meetings and so forth, brought that up. So in exchange for those significant increases in density, going from what the current 2.5 FAR is to what the plan is recommending at 10, that's huge, right? And then also going up to 400 feet. So in order to kind of counterbalance that, that's why the plan is recommending that some of those setbacks to the height, so that you allow for that light and air to penetrate down to ground level. You don't walk down the street and feel like you're in this tight claustrophobic box. That's part of the urban design objectives of the plan. And so the plan does also note that along Kapiolani Boulevard, it recommends another type of zoning district that isn't in place there. And so through these IPDTs, which come before we actually get to implementing the zoning, it allows for that flexibility. But until we get to the Ala Moana area, which takes a significant amount of resources to go through a neighborhood rezoning, we're on our third right now at Halava. Once we get to the Ala Moana area, we use this policy document that City Council has adopted and makes those recommendations to fulfill the vision of the plan. And we'll have to look at how to make those balances between the recommended additional height and kind of the neighborhood feel and vision that the community and City Council signed off on. And so, it's not just other parts of the community discussion today, related about the commensurate benefits tied to the additional height and density, but it's really also more broad than that. It has to be commensurate for other relaxations that this IPDT flexibility allows, like the development standards, those height setbacks, yard setbacks, and so forth. So that's really why it comes back to what was mentioned at being kind of a project by project analysis, because every project is unique. Other things like with the driveway connecting throughout the site, some of these things are expected as part of utilizing a TOD permit, that interconnectivity. If the objective was just to provide affordable housing, there's that state HRS 201H chapter law that developers can use. So, when developers come in for a TOD project, we're making sure that it complies with the intent of TOD in order to use that permit. So that's why, kind of how we base our recommendations.
Thank you very much for the statement and comment. Any other thoughts at this point? Please, Chair Waters.
The last gentleman that was up here.
Tim Strites.
Yeah, hi. So I'm just curious, talking about TOD, so it's currently allowed is a 250-foot building, right? If you weren't taking advantage of the IPDT process, what you're allowed to build is a 250-foot building, 250-foot tall building, right? With an FAR of 2.5. Is that correct?
Correct.
And in this process, the permitting process, can DPP require additional setbacks, bigger sidewalk, a bike path, or traffic improvements? They can, right? Without the bonus, we're just talking about what's currently available as a tool to DPP.
Right, so that's unique to the TOD permits. And
No. Oh. I'm just talking about, let's take the TOD permits aside. What's currently allowable on this site and what tools DPP has to ensure that any development, no matter where it is, that it fits in the neighborhood and the community, right? So you require, and we do it all the time, right? You have to have bike parking, You have to have X amount of, setbacks, right?
That's correct. The standard LUO development standards apply to any ministerial building permit. So should a ministerial building permit that's just complying with the land use ordinance come in, they would have to look at all of that. What you're talking about with sidewalk widths and potential traffic impacts, that is something that goes through our site development division, where our traffic engineers will look at something, and their basic question is this project creating adverse impacts to the traffic network in the surrounding area? They can, based on the applicant's traffic studies, require that they say put in a signal if that's warranted or that kind of thing to mitigate those traffic impacts. Although that's separate from the land use ordinance, it's more of a building code and traffic code kind of thing.
Right. A good example, Chair Say, in our district, the Omiders are building a building on Wilhelmina Rise. We're requiring them to do certain things, like they got to put a traffic light there on Wiley Avenue. Okay. So my point really is, if we can already require the developers to mitigate these things, really what we should be talking about is the bonus height and density, right? So when you say these things like the additional setback so that light can come down, that's great. But really, you're getting 15 stories, right, with a FAR of 10. Yeah, and I'm not saying that the 23.5% affordables is not commensurate, because that's more than most other buildings did. But I mean, just want to keep the conversation like on point, and for the new members, that this is what we're talking about. You get a bonus. What in exchange are you going to do for the bonus? So while I like the bike parking and the driveway, let's talk about other things. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Liz, do you have any thoughts as far as for the next hearing? Or Isaiah? No, we've got to work out something as far as what the plan should look like, and we'll all be participating. But thank you very much for your time. Okay, any other thoughts right now at this point? Okay, let's move on to testimony. Madam Clerk, do we now proceed with the remote testimony?
Yes, Chair, we have a testifier.
Okay, I have it right here. Is Benjamin Sadowski here in remote? Oh, Benjamin?
Testifier is in person.
Oh, remote. Let's see, so where's the remote? Okay, Miss Angela Young, hold on.
Aloha Chair, Vice Chair in the committee, Angela Melody Young, testifying in support of buildings like this that attacks the affordable housing crisis, encourages healthy development, and conducts traffic impact reports and school studies and all that. The focus on marketing to local residents is very necessary. As the developer said, the statute requires 50% of units to be marketed to local buyers, and this development is abiding to that law. As an advocacy grassroots, this is our rationale for supporting buildings like this. From Hope Services, Hawaii Director of Community Relations, one of the biggest drivers of homelessness and evictions that's been experienced, especially during the pandemic, has been the influx of out-of-state buyers, driving up prices and displacing residents. So we can see from this conundrum of affordable housing crisis and homelessness is connected. And there was a Senate bill, a new proposal that attacks the housing crisis by addressing non-residents to limit foreigners or non-residents from buying by disincentivizing non-residents with a tax. And the AG said that it's unconstitutional because of the Commerce Clause. And so anytime local residents are treated differently than non-residents, it's kind of like a no-can-do kind of thing. So the AG declared this when the Senate bill came out this season and it was deferred. So in CARES' advocacy work, this is some of the research we've studied, and so hence the support for buildings like this, which markets to locals, and is aware of the statutes which
okay,
such
Ms. Young, Angela, Young, your time has expired, and thank you very much for your support of the measure before us. Okay?
Thanks.
Thank you. At this time, the chair would like to designate Chair Waters with your presence here as far as getting quorum. Thank you. Madam Clerk, are there any further remote testifiers at this time?
Chair, there are none.
Okay, thank you very much. Let's move on to registered in-person testifiers. First, we have Mr. Michael Pacheco, IBEW 1186. State your name and the organization you represent.
Good morning, Honorable Chair Say, Vice Chair Dos Santos Tam, and committee members. My name is Mike Pacheco, and I am here on behalf of IBW 1186 to testify in support of resolution, 2362. On top of our written testimony, I just wanted to take a quick second to kind of spotlight our perspective on projects of this project and projects like this, where it comes to revitalizing the Ala Moana Boulevard area, and more importantly, really fulfilling the vision of the city TOD plan for the area. Outside of that, I just want to thank you for the time to get a chance to testify. Hope everyone is doing well.
Thank you very much. Any questions for Mr. Pacheco? If not, thank you very much. Moving on to Jolie Tokusato. Oh, press the...
Hi, Jolie Tokusato with Unite Here Local 5. We have written testimony, but I just wanted to put some comments in. I feel strongly that the council should expect more from developers, more for our community. We have no shortage of new buildings going up. Developers will continue to come before you and ask for things, so you need to get more for us. Every time, developers will say the same things. How beautiful the building will be, culturally sensitive, provide many jobs, green spaces, affordable homes, upgrade the area overrun by homeless people. I have yet to experience any of the community benefits from these projects. I live and work in this area. You can help set the framework for a better future. Many buildings in the area used to be apartment buildings for residents, for modest people like me, you know, who don't make a whole lot of money. You can see that from some parts of their valuation. I'm a working class person, like I said. I can't afford the luxury units or even mid-priced units. So, you know, I just want to say I can't even, I just want to reemphasize that we should just expect more because they're going to come back over and over and over. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions for Ms. Tokusato? Okay. Mr. Benjamin Sadowski.
Aloha. Ben Sadowski with Unite Here Local 5. You have our written testimony, so I'll just emphasize a few points. We urge City Council to demand significantly more affordable housing with this development and to demand improvements to the quality of the units to be provided. I think a lot of these issues have been discussed here today, which is encouraging, but our issues include, you know, we think that the units are too small. Even the average of the studio units being proposed appears to be about 317 square feet, and for the one bedrooms, the average is about 417 square feet. If you compare that with like the Park on Ke'eaumoku, their studios are on average 403 square feet, and the one bedroom 601 square feet, although we understand there's differences in terms of the, you know, the for sale, the amount being provided, and so forth. But we feel the affordable units are too far from the potential future rail station, especially as a walking distance. The 1564 Kalakaua units are almost, I think, over 3/4 of a mile. Yeah, and so forth. The affordability periods are too short, even though, well, that's more of a general question about the policy in general, right? But we think that, you know, the developer's undervaluing the entitlements it's seeking and using different calculations for the benefits it's providing. And so we feel like there could be a lot more, and it could be a better project. So,
thank you very much, Mr. Sadowski. Any questions for Mr. Sadowski? If not, Madam Chair, are there any further in-person testifiers?
Chair, there are none.
Okay, thank you. Members, at this time, we are in discussion on this particular measure. If there is not, at this point in time, the chair would then like to recommend that Resolution 23-62 be amended to the CD1 listed on the agenda addendum. And the chair would like to go over it with all of you. Yeah. And just be patient. The staff just said it's 5 pages long, so I'll start off right now as far as the conceptual plan proposed draft. The proposed CD1 makes the following amendments. Amends the resolution title to read as follows: approving a conceptual plan for an interim planned development transit project for the 1538 Kapilani Tower mixed-use development. In the second and third whereas clause, clarifies the description of the project. C, it adds a new whereas clause to provide details on the project's proposed 101 affordable rental units that are being provided at the 2 off-site locations. D, in the fifth, sixth, and seventh whereas clauses, provide that DPP complete its findings and recommendations for the project on April 12, 2023, which was received by the Council on April 18, 2023, as Departmental Communication 260 of 2023. Deletes Condition D, which would have not allowed the parking podium to encroach into the 20-foot above the ground floor height setback along Kapilani Boulevard, and would have required the applicant to submit to DPP updated plans showing that the parking podium complies with the height setback along Kapilani Boulevard. And we also re-alphabetize the subsequent conditions. F, in re-alphabetized condition D, clarifies that the residential tower or parking podium may encroach into the BMX3 district height setback requirements as specified in condition D. In condition D, 2, provides that the parking podium may encroach 13 feet instead of the 3 feet into the Makaloa Street height setback. In condition D4, provides that the parking podium may encroach 13 feet instead of 3 feet into the height setback along the western property line. 3, adds a new condition D5 to provide that the parking podium may encroach 3 feet into the 20-foot above the ground floor height setback along Kapilani Boulevard. G, adds a new condition E to provide that the project may encroach 10 feet into the BMX3 district eastern and western side yard requirements. The project does not provide any side yards. And we re-alphabetize the subsequent conditions. H, in re-alphabetized condition G, in re-alphabetizing condition G1, clarifies that the project's affordable rental housing requirements under the revised ordinance of Honolulu Chapter 29, and as a community benefit to offset the project's height and density bonuses. We're clarifying that an affordable housing agreement must be executed and recorded with the State Bureau of Conveyance or the Land Court of the State of Hawaii, or both as appropriate. 2, re-alphabetize condition G3 that clarifies that a car, CAR, share plan is required under condition H7, and a signage plan is required under condition L. Chair, also we would like to re-alphabetize condition H. We delete re-alphabetize condition H1, which would have required that the updated parking podium design and layout comply with the 20-foot height setback requirement along Kapilani Boulevard and accommodate a 414 off-street vehicle parking. So I am taking the department's position. And renumber subsequent provisions in condition 8. 2, in re-alphabetized and renumbered condition H1 requires details showing the number and location of the 38 short-term and 224 long-term bicycle parking spaces and bike share stations. Requires all short-term bicycle identifiable areas, requires all short-term bicycle parking spaces be located on the ground floor in visible and easily identifiable areas near building entrances. Also requires specification of bicycle rack types for the short-term and long-term parking spaces and the location of wayfinding signage for the short-term bicycle parking spaces. 3, in re-alphabetized and renumbered condition H2 clarifies that the updated floor plans must include preliminary dwelling unit calculations pursuant to the DPP's affordable housing rules, indicating how the number and type of affordable rental units provided pursuant to revised ordinance of Honolulu, Chapter 29, and as a community benefit pursuant to condition G1 were calculated to comply with the room factors and the unit mix requirements. 4, adds a new condition H4 to require updated project plans that accurately show height setback encroachments along the eastern and western property lines. Oh, I apologize. The staff has corrected me that I am giving the developer the 466 positions. Okay. That's the parking lots, yeah. We add a new condition H to require details showing how the porte cochere parking spaces will be used and how traffic control through the porte cochere will be managed. 6, adds a new condition H6 to require details showing the relocation of the planters boxes within the 22-foot wide pedestrian walkway along Kapilani Boulevard so that they do not interfere with the usable space, and indicating how the pedestrian walkway space will be activated. 7, adds a new condition H7 to require details showing the number and location of the 10-car parking spaces and vehicles. And J, we re-alphabetize condition I that requires that the applicant commit in writing to implement all mitigation measures and protocols for archaeological historic properties and cultural resources recommended in the Archaeological Inventory Survey, including but not limited to the discovery of EV on the project site. Alternatively, the applicant must submit to DPP a copy of a letter from the State Historic Preservation Division indicating that an AIS is not required. K, we re-alphabetize condition J that clarifies that the update of the project's preliminary wind study dated July 25th, 2022 must include a wind tunnel test to quantify the wind conditions and evaluate the effectiveness of any wind mitigation strategies for public areas identified in the preliminary wind study, including the project's amenities and recreation decks. And it requires the applicant to implement the recommendations of the updated wind study. L, a re-alphabetized condition K. In the condition K1 provides that the timeline must be in a format acceptable to DPP and that the initial traffic impact analysis report was dated October 22nd. Re-alphabetized condition K2 that clarifies the items that must be included in the construction management plan. 3, in re-alphabetized condition K3 clarifies the items that must be included in the traffic management plan. And 4, in the re-alphabetized condition K4, provides that the initial traffic impact analysis report, TIAR, was prepared by the Wilson Okamoto Corporation and requires the applicant to implement recommendations of the updated or initial and separate supplemental and post traffic impact analysis report. M adds a new condition L to provide that prior to the issuance of a certificate of occupancy for the project's commercial tenants, the applicant is required to submit to DPP for review and approval a signage plan, including wayfinding signage located on the project site and the right-of-ways with directions to the future Kalia rail station, bus stops, taxi stands, car share areas, bike share facilities, regional attractions, public parks, on-site public gathering places, and significant cultural resources in the vicinity of the project site. And adds a new condition M to provide the development of 765 Amano Street and 1564 Kalakaua Avenue, the affordable rental sites, must comply with all applicable land use ordinance standards and requirements. If an affordable rental site is being developed pursuant to revised ordinance of Honolulu, Chapter 32, affordable rental housing, development of that site must comply with the standards and requirements of Chapter 32. O adds a new condition N to provide that prior to the issuance of any building permits for the project, the applicant is required to make a cash contribution to the city in the amount of $160,000 to be used toward constructing future lanes and pedestrian walkways in the vicinity of the project site or the affordable rental sites, or toward complete streets improvements to the Ala Moana Neighborhood Board TOD plan area, or any combination thereof. And we re-alphabetize those subsequent conditions. P conforms re-alphabetized condition Q to the standard language for the IPDT resolutions relating to the deadline for the applicant to obtain a building permit for the project and extensions of that deadline. Q conforms re-alphabetized condition R to the standard language for IPDT resolutions relating to conformance with the project's conceptual plan and provides an exception to comply with condition H, which requires the project's application for a major special district permit that includes certain updated plans and documents. R, add a new first bid resolve clause to provide findings of the council regarding the project's conceptual plan as conditioned in the resolution as follows. The project concept as a unified plan is in the general interest of the public. The requested project boundaries and requested flexibility with respect to development standards relating to maximum building height, maximum density, height setbacks, and side yards are generally consistent with the objectives of the transit-oriented development and the provisions enumerated in Revised Ordinance Honolulu 21-9.100/8, parentheses A, parentheses 1, parentheses E, comma, 21-9.100-8, parentheses A, 1F, and 21-9.100-9, parentheses B. The requested flexibility with respect to the development standards relating to the maximum building height, maximum density, height setbacks, and side yards are commensurate with the public amenities and community benefits proposed. The project's additional density and height will not be detrimental to the quality of the neighborhood character or urban design and will not negatively impact any adopted public views. And 5, the public amenities and community benefits proposed will produce timely, demonstrable benefits to the community, support a neighborhood transportation network, and implement the established Revised Ordinance Honolulu once more 21-9.100-4 and 21.9, 100-6. And finally, we just made miscellaneous technical and non-substance amendments. So members of the committee, this is the proposed draft that we have. So are there any discussions? Because all of you will now get another crack at the CD. Okay, Councilmember Wire, please.
No, I just wanted to say mahalo to Chair for your work on the CD. I'll be deferring to you and the conversations I know you've probably had with DPP stakeholders and other community members. Appreciate all the conversation and the testimony, especially that, raise some good questions about what we need to scrutinize in projects like this, right? We definitely don't want to be doing subsidizing luxury. We definitely don't want to have projects, where you have affordable housing occupants that don't have access to the same amenities that other tenants do. And so I think, in that sense, appreciate the conversation from our colleagues today. And of course, I think if DPP's, main opposition was based on the lack of affordable units, then I would say definitely we need to be pushing for that, because I think maximizing affordable units, getting as many as we can, while also, adding to the market at all levels, given that this project in whole with the community benefits would bring 426 units if you take away the 6 that are getting replaced, new units to the market. I'm grateful for that. And, open the conversation, understand that DPP's main opposition is the parking. We always have some in the community that want more parking. We're managing this in TOD. It's kind of within the realm of what's, the numbers that are being thrown around. And of course, the setback and the density and all that. I'll always defer to DPP. But like you said, I know Waipahu just got a 500 unit building. And so we're all sharing, right? A 500 unit building in a community that's dramatically different than this community, right? In terms of the surrounding buildings. So appreciate all the work on this and all the scrutiny that was brought up. Mahalo.
Councilmember Tyler DeSantos-Tan, please.
Thank you, Chair. This being the first IPDT project that's proposed off-site, I think it's been a good jumping off point for future discussion. And I agree with my colleague, Councilmember Wire, that moving forward, there's going to be a lot of things that we should be looking at. In my discussion with the developer, they brought up issues like the room factor calculation, and that's something we can look at. Also, the room size maximum and minimum for Bill 7 projects. As well as what Chair Waters brought up in his line of questioning about the allowable heights under Bill 7, and can we squeeze more density and more units, especially in this already dense urban area. I mean, we have a really good opportunity here. So I appreciate your work on this proposed CD1, and as we consider projects in the future, I think that that'll be a lens that we look at in analyzing those.
Okay, any further discussion? Councilmember Kiana, no? Okay, Chair Waters, no? Councilmember Tupola? Nope? Okay. So one final thought before we vote on it is that for the applicant and the department, please come together to see where we could find that common ground. Yeah? Okay. So we went through the discussion. Any objections or reservations? Hearing none. Oh, excuse me. The chair recommends that Resolution 23-62 be amended to the CD1 listed on the agenda addendum. We had the discussion. There's no objections or reservations. Hearing none, the resolution has been amended to a committee draft 1. The chair then recommends that Resolution 23-62 and the proposed committee draft 1 be reported out for the scheduling of another public hearing and then referred back to the zoning committee for further consideration. Any discussion, objections, or reservations? Hearing none, so ordered. Thank you very much for your patience, all of you. Can we move on to agenda number 3, Bill 18. And this measure deals with the special assignment inspections. Remember, we do have a proposed onto the agenda a committee draft 1 version of the bill proposed by Councilmember Tupola. For your information, a summary of the amendment is listed on the agenda. At this time, I'll defer to Councilmember Tupola and explain her committee draft 1.
Thank you, Chair. The proposed CD1 amends ROH 18-3.1C2 by adding a reference to obtaining required agency approvals in addition to obtaining all applicable discretionary permits. B, amends ROH 18-3.1C3 by adding that stormwater quality compliance includes approval by the Building Code NPDES Plans Examining Section where applicable, and replacing discretionary permits with discretionary approvals. C, amends renumbered ROH 18-3.167 by replacing drawings used with drawings submitted, adding that drawings must be in addition to drawings submitted with the building permit application, and adding that the applicant must ensure that all sets of drawings are issued for construction and stamped by a licensed professional where required. D, amends renumbered ROH 18-3.1C9 by deleting the provision that if a building permit is not issued within an 18-month period, the applicant may submit a new request for a special assignment inspection, and replacing it with a provision that if a building permit is not issued within 365 days of the building permit application creation date, the special assignment inspection will expire. E, amends renumbered ROH 18-3.1C10 by adding or certificate of completion after certificate of occupancy. F adds the end of ROH 18-3.1C the following: failure of the owner or designated representative to obtain the building permit prior to completion of the project may result in fines 50 per day until the building permit is approved for issuance. And lastly, makes miscellaneous technical and non-substantive amendments.
Okay. Any questions for the introducer? If not, may we proceed on, members? Let's call upon the Director of Department of Planning and Permitting, Ms. Donna Puna.
Thank you, Chair. DPP is definitely in support of this draft, and we appreciate Councilmember Tupola for working with us on this. This provides another option for DPP to help development move forward while permits are in process. I would note that until we have enough resources to mobilize for residential SAIs, we wouldn't be able to take advantage of this. But when we do, I think this would be a great additional asset for us when it comes to moving development along. And then lastly, I did hear concerns about one of the amendments that requires a building permit within 365 days as opposed to 18 months. And I would just say that overall we're trying to get well below 365 days. So I don't think that will be a problem in the future, and that there's language and authority in there for the building official to waive if there's good cause certain requirements in here. So if for some reason the permit is still being processed beyond 12 months, that shouldn't be an issue for us. So in any case, we are very supportive of this draft, the CD1. Thank you.
Okay, any discussion for the Director?
Chair. Oh, go ahead.
Okay, Councilmember Tyler DeSantos-Tan.
Okay, Director, thank you for your work on this proposal. I just wanted to ask, what's the staffing condition at DPP with regard to the existing special assignment inspectors? And if we were to expand this to other categories of projects, how many more staffers would we need?
Well, so currently, I think we're still around a 25% vacancy rate, but we continue to hire. We have hired many more new inspectors. But I think that for residential SAIs, and it depends how many people would take advantage of this in parallel with all the other improvements we're making, where they might not feel that it's necessary. But I would need to go back and work more with my ASO, but I think we would need a team, maybe 10 or more inspectors, if we believe that it would be a huge influx of applications.
Please.
And then, I've always been very concerned about the proliferation of monster homes in our community, just people subverting the rules and doing things to get around existing processes. What sort of safeguards are in place to prevent a special assignment inspector from overlooking or approving something that shouldn't be approved, and letting the builder just go on their merry way? I mean, what processes are in place here?
So I think in general, when it comes to monster homes, we internally, for any projects that come close to the 0.6 or 0.7 FAR, that we have more eyes on it, and we have additional review. So within the permitting phase, that we are trying to be more aware of that. And then I think that just overall, we're revoking permits when we do see that. So I think people understand that there are consequences, and to be very cognizant of what the requirements are. But in any case, I think it would apply for SAI, residential SAIs. We would still be very, try to be aware of what's coming in close to those FARs and make sure that nothing is built outside of those requirements.
No, I appreciate that, and I think that in a further committee meeting and maybe working with the introducer of this measure, we can put some further safeguards in, because I understand just how much people want to get their permits through, but we can't, allow bad actors to get through. So maybe some sort of FAR standard or, the number of units in there. We can take a look at that.
Okay, thank you very much. Any further discussion? Councilmember Kiaina?
So that I could understand, single-family or two-family construction projects do not qualify currently for the special assignment inspections.
Correct.
So what types of projects do qualify? Are they apartment units, ADUs, commercial properties?
Yes, commercial properties, all the other types of projects, the bigger projects qualify.
Oh, for this. So the three that I listed qualify, but like major projects like the one that we just approved, would they qualify?
They could if they met all the requirements.
Okay, got it. I just wanted to understand. Thank you. So you are just making this applicable to residential?
Correct.
I see. Okay, thank you.
Okay, any further? No? Okay, Councilmember Tupola.
Thank you. Thanks, Director, for being here and for mentioning in number 9. I do know you guys are trying to improve that. I do think in maybe the last version of this, we really got to discuss it. I think the timeline whereby you guys might be able to get down below 365 is still yet on the horizon. So there are people concerned that in the last portion of the section, failure of the owner, blah, 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 with the $50 fine, this is also concerning because for a handful, not all, but some who are using the commercial SAI who didn't get the permit were fined daily. And of course, when they did end up getting it, they DPP backdated it back to when they got it. So they were able to be reimbursed or not fined the complete amount, but they are concerned. And this is separate, but I saw on the website that you guys are going to start having everyone go through e-plans now. So there's kind of a hustle and bustle in the construction community because that pipeline is pretty full. And the reason why we talked about residential SAI was because the majority of these permits backlog are residential and not commercial projects. So did you have any thoughts on that last paragraph, the $50 fine? Because again, we don't want to create something that's supposed to benefit local residential home builders and then at the same time penalize them when it's not their fault and it might be the department's fault that a permit wasn't issued. What are your thoughts?
I agree. I think that we would look at each case, and if it's based on a delay by DPP, then that applicant should not be penalized. And so we would look at that and we wouldn't impose fines when it was our doing rather than the applicants. I think there are instances where we want to make sure we want this enforcement to make sure that the applicant continues to work through the process and does everything that's required. So I think that is appropriate to have this fine. But again, it's to make sure that on their end they do things and that if we're not doing something properly, then they wouldn't be subject to this type of enforcement.
And currently, in follow-up with Councilmember Dos Santos Tam's question with the 10 extra staffers, we did talk briefly about possibly having some relief workers or some type of interim solution as you try to increase the amount of DPP workers you have. How is that going?
So we're still we're working on that. We're looking at, I think we've drafted up a scope of work in order to get that type of contracted manpower. And so that could include code reviewers as well as inspectors. So I think that if we can get everything lined up, that we could possibly use that manpower to help fulfill this as well.
No, I'm glad it's moving forward. What does the time frame look like on that?
I think we're working through, we have the draft and it's working through the other departments for their approval. So, and we're waiting for July 1st to have money available.
So basically through budget and fiscal services and possibly through HR, you're trying to work those things.
Correct.
Good. So yeah, lastly, I just want to say that I do think these are great, that we've been able to work on some different law changes, but I'm still heavily concerned we need more bodies.
Yes.
So yeah, continue on the work that you're doing there and anything we can do to help, we'd be happy to do that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Members, any other questions for the director? Okay, I do have another question here for DPP for enforcement purposes. Are property owners responsible for violations, the cure and correction of violations, and the payment of fines imposed? And for special assignment inspections, shouldn't the property owner, instead of the applicant, assume all of the risk of proceeding with construction prior to issuance of a building permit?
So generally, the owner is responsible for all enforcement actions. That we can also add within the violation, whether it's the consultant or the the applicant themselves. So it depends, but always it should be the owner, the landowner, that is subject to the enforcement.
Okay. And then what penalties are there if a SAI approves something that's not to code?
Okay.
I think it goes back to, if it's like a building code violation, it would be the same fines that would apply if they're not up to code, whether it's $50 per day until correction.
Does the SAI get punished in some way?
I think they could. I think they could be listed as part of the violators on the enforcement notice.
Chair, I have a follow-up.
Go right ahead, please.
Thank you. I would note too, Director, since I'm working with a constituent who's using or trying to get a commercial SAI, it is not the easiest. I actually have gone through the process with them, and they've been going through that for quite some time, and it's costly. So the SAI is not a free pass, but rather you pay extra fees on top of whatever you want to do to be able to proceed while your permit is being processed. I'm not saying it's bulletproof, but I'm saying that I have had a hard time even finishing this commercial SAI with this constituent because of a lot of back and forth. So yes, I would say DPP has been stringent on the applications, maybe too stringent, but I do see that there needs to be a push and pull there, right? It can't be free passes. So again, the thought here with this bill is we have to help our residential homeowners and not just commercial projects. So thank you for being open to this. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any further discussion for the director? If not, thank you very much. At this time, members will proceed with the remote testimony. Madam Clerk, do we have any remote testifiers?
Yes, Chair, we have testifiers.
Okay. Is Ms. Karen Luke there? Hi, Karen, I see you. Karen, unmute yourself. Hello, Karen.
Our testifier is not responding, Chair.
Okay, why don't we move on to Mr. Rocky Mode?
Testifier is not logged on.
Okay, Miss Angela Young. Angela, are you there? Hello, Angela?
Hello, I'm here.
Okay, go right ahead, please.
Okay. So I'm testifying in strong support, and as I reflect on these conversations about affordable housing and development, I'm personally really appreciative of the focus on how we can all work together to build faster. I think this is a concern of the broader community and not a concern of just one or two organizations. And very supportive of this resolution relating to special assignment inspections, especially where it says there's a sense of urgency to commence construction in a timely manner. Examples include, but are not limited to the impending lapse of funding, federal compliance deadlines, financing obligations, or release obligations. And in our research, we've advocated and supported policies that attack affordable housing and from different angles that have attacked housing, building housing from different angles. And as we, it seems like there is a plan, it's just not integrated. And there was a lot of things that they were working on at the state that I don't know if the city knows about, but yeah, so we're in support. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Young. Any questions for Ms. Young? If not, may we go back to Ms. Karen Luke? Are you there, Ms. Luke? If not, Madam Clerk, are there any? Oops.
Hi, this is Karen.
Okay, go right ahead.
Aloha, Chair Say and members of the Zoning Committee. My name is Karen Luke, and I support Bill 18 CD1. We have a lot of talent in Honolulu, but our building code is so restrictive that we're unable to fully utilize professional services to expedite construction. Please vote in favor of Bill 18 CD1. Mahalo for your consideration.
Thank you very much, Ms. Luke. Any questions for Ms. Luke, members? If not, thank you again. Okay, is there anyone else, Madam Clerk, for the remote testifiers?
Chair, there are none.
Okay, great, thank you. We will now proceed with in-person testimony. Do we have any in-person testifiers? No.
Chair, there are none.
Okay, thank you. Members, we are now in discussion. Councilmember Tupola.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. According to the conversations today, I'll be working in the next committee round to add in some of the thoughts that were shared by committee members as well as the department, but I do feel like it's very close to exactly what we need, and I do hope that this will help alleviate especially residential permits. Thank you.
Okay. Any other thoughts, members, at this point? If, with your indulgence, the chair would like to recommend that we postpone it and work on it further and see, what can be discussed as far as other issues that may come up. But you'll be involved in determining the 365 days. At least the landowner or the private owner is going to be held liable also versus the applicant, etc. But more importantly, some of the concerns that were voiced by others about the monster homes. But overall, it's a measure that will be taken up. And just for your understanding, this one will be posted for the next public hearing. Okay?
Okay, thank you, Chair. I'll work with you on that.
And please work on it.
I will. I have the notes from everyone. Thank you.
Okay. Councilmember DeSantos Tam, is that okay with you too as a vice chair? That way we can work on it because of some of the abuses in Chair Waters' district and my district and your district with the monster homes. Okay. So the chair recommends that action on Bill 18 of 2023 be postponed to the next zoning committee hearing to consider further amendments to the bill to ensure that the private property owners are aware and assume the responsibility of violations discovered during the special assignment inspections. Any discussion, any objections or reservations? Hearing none, so ordered. Finally, moving on to agenda number 4, Bill 6. This bill would alleviate the backlog of building permit applications and reviews by giving the building official the authority to allow building permit applications to be reviewed for compliance with pertinent codes by parties other than the Department of Planning and Permitting. Members, we have posted to the agenda a committee draft 1 version of the bill that was approved by the committee at its meeting on April 5th, 2023, and subsequently postponed. For your information, a summary of the amendments is listed on the agenda. At this time, we have the Director of the Department of Planning and Permitting, Ms. Apuna.
Thank you, Chair. Like the SAI for residential in the last bill, we are supportive of this bill, which provides another option for building permit applicants while we continue to make the major changes in the department to alleviate the backlog. But this is a good option for many professionals who are interested in taking advantage of it. The bill seems very simple as far as providing the authority to the department to allow it, but a lot of the details and requirements will be put forth in the administrative rules that will be authorized through this bill. And lastly, I think that we did speak previously about maybe adding some enforcement provisions for this or some penalties when people don't comply and are being forthright. But other than that, we are very supportive of this draft. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Members, any questions for the director? Okay, Council Member, go right ahead, Kiaina, followed by Wire.
Thank you. Director, the last time we heard this bill, I asked a few questions and some of the answers were not super clear to me, so I'm going to ask a couple of them again, if you don't mind. I know you went over the overview of the process, so I'll skip that one, but can you tell me what parts of the process are currently allowed to be done by third-party reviewers, and what parts are done by DPP?
So basically, the third-party reviewers, they review specific codes, mechanical, electrical, structural, and that's for on the commercial side. And then on the residential, they can do residential and LUO. So that's basically what they do. All the other phases, including the pre-screen and the routing, and then the issue to approval, are done by DPP.
Okay, got it. And does DPP currently do a final review after a third-party reviewer before building permits are issued? Last time you said, I believe so. So I just needed to get confirmation if in fact that was true or not true.
Okay, that was not true. So we don't do a final review. DPP does not do a final review. Although in the past we have done audits of third-party review, but there is no, as a general practice, we do not do a final review of third-party review work.
Okay, and with regard to historic preservation, how does the current process ensure that DPP's kuleana to mitigate impacts to EV, kupuna, and historic sites does not get delegated to third-party reviewers?
So again, DPP, after it's pre-screen, we do the routing, or we determine which agencies that the application needs to be reviewed by outside agencies. So that's within our kuleana to say, SHPD, this project requires SHPD review. So that's not within TPR's kuleana to determine.
Yes, I understand, but I want to make sure third-party review, you don't delegate historic preservation to third-party reviewers,
No,
do you?
no.
Okay, I need to get that clear.
Yeah, no, they're limited again to just electrical, mechanical, building, and structural,
Okay.
and but not any kind of historic review.
Okay, so if DPP already uses third-party reviewers, why is council action on this measure necessary? And if this bill does not pass, will DPP continue to use third-party reviewers?
So I think from a legal point, the statutory authority is not there to allow third-party review, but it is in our rules, and this happened a ways back. And there can be argument that it is established, but I think generally, right, you need a statute to authorize a policy such as this. So in a way, I think it would legitimize it. If we aren't able to pass it, I think we would look at that question that you have, whether we would continue. Overall, though, I think we do need to revise or look at our rules for third-party review and tighten those up as well.
So can I ask, has anyone complained and challenged you that you did not have administrative authority to do so?
No.
Well, clearly you have the authority. You don't, like, I'm quite sensitive to statutory authority, so because I've done that myself with regard to the Hawaiian Homes Commission Act at the federal level, because they were trying to wash their hands clean of the Hawaiian Homes Commission Act. So we statutorily authorized an administrative process that Interior would have to undertake. And I did that to safeguard the interests of Hawaiian homeland beneficiaries. But in this case, no one is complaining, and no one has challenged your legal authority to be doing so. So I just still question whether or not this is needed. And lastly, on self-certification, can you explain the difference again between self-certification and third-party certification?
So third-party review, it's as if they're doing the same review that DPP code reviewers would do. And then self-certification is the actual design professional self-certifying that the work that they're providing meets all the codes and regulations. So it's kind of like the actual designer versus the reviewer. Third-party review is reviewing the work and saying that it's to code, whereas the professional designer or engineer is putting forth their work and saying it meets.
Got it.
all the requirements.
And so self-certification is allowed now, right? Is self-certification allowed now?
In some instances it is, but no, we would like it to be generally allowed.
Oh.
Yes.
Oh, but are you practicing it or not practicing it?
We are not practicing
Oh, okay.
it. I think
so this is giving statutory authority for self-certification process. Yes. Okay, got it. And then given the problems that have occurred with third-party reviewers, what disincentivizes applicants to self-certify projects that do not comply with existing codes?
I think it's going to be in the rules where we're going to make sure that there's specific standards for the types of people that can be self-certifiers, and a good, clean record of what the types of applications we have gotten from them in the past. There's going to be training for these people that want to self-certify. And I think, again, as I had mentioned, that there should be some penalties when we do find kind of bad actors in the system.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, any further discussions? Okay, Councilmember Tupola.
Oh, go ahead, Councilmember Wired. Okay. Hi, Director. Thank you again for commenting on some of those questions. I did want to make clear there, and we could just be saying different language here, but I've met with many third-party reviewers, and there is a final review step for their permits to go through an examiner, and this is just the step right before permit issuance. So just for clarity, after they're done, it doesn't necessarily all the way go through. There's just one more examiner step, of which there has been complaints that this examiner is not a architect or engineer, and sometimes they get stuck at that last step as well. Is this something that you're aware of?
Yeah, I'm aware that it does come back to us when the third-party review completes their review and it goes through an examiner for final, I think because DPP is ultimately the one approving it. And so they kind of wrap everything up and then approve to issue at that point. So
yeah, I just wanted to clarify that because Councilmember Karen asked, after a third-party reviewer is done, does it go back to DPP? The answer is yes, actually.
Right.
Because you guys have to plan examine, which, I mean, I get it that you guys need to look at it one more time, but it's unfortunate because there also is an automatic approval form that you guys give out, and handfuls of people who use that do not get automatic approval. So there is still a backlog in that last step prior to permit issuance. The other question I had was whether or not the self-certification is going to allow zoning certification, because I think if not, there is not as much of an, need for this, because that step right now is still a sticking point for a lot of people. So will a self-certifier be able to certify for zoning, yes or no?
I think that will be determined in the rulemaking, and we're open to it. I don't think we've ruled that out as an option.
Yeah, because right now the zoning one is not something that third-party reviewers can do. As you said, it's architectural, structural engineering, mechanical. And for clarity, these individuals do take an international code test, which is about $100. They also have $100 million of insurance that they have. They can only review for building code for the commercial. And for the residential one, they also do have to have insurance, and they have to renew their application every 2 years at $1,000. So I think the question that many of them had in follow-up with the whole what is the difference between this and third party is, are they going to have to carry their own insurance?
For self-certification, yes. I think we would require insurance.
Something that the residential third-party reviewers have to take is LUO compliance test, a code compliance test. Will that be also required?
Yes, we would require training and some standard of capability, whether it's through testing or other training.
So one of the past problems that the department had under Tim Hugh, which was a previous deputy, was that there were rubber stampers in the self-certification process that were not looking at plans at all and just stamping it and certifying it. So, and I know you said, okay, we're gonna find, or we're gonna try to find bad actors, but really how is that gonna be different than what is already happening right now? You know what I mean? So like, I get it that maybe this is another tool. I'm obviously not as in favor of this as us trying to clean out your admin rules so that we can be a little bit sharper on our third-party review. How would you how would you prohibit that aside from a fine, though? Rubber stampers.
So I think, and our concerns are similar to yours. We definitely don't want to open this. It's for a very specific group. You know, the ones that we know that can perform well, and I think part of it is understanding their history with us. If they have, we know when we get applications that from the same designers that aren't so good, you know, and we know that we know the ones that are really good, that they meet all the requirements and they go through smoothly. So it's the ones that are kind of at the top of the grading chart in a way, and that's part of it. We might have to have like a grading chart. Like if you've had too many comments previously on past applications, or we've seen that you haven't, that you're not doing a good job, then maybe you don't qualify.
I see. You're going to follow trends on whether or not they had been successful in how they did their review.
Right. I mean, we need a very high level, high standard for this type of self-certifier to participate.
I guess my last comment, you know, is that I do understand there were issues with third-party reviewers, and specifically it was with commercial and not residential, some of the issues that had happened. But I also don't want us to discount the fact that it is a program being authorized by the city. People are getting certified. They are taking out insurance, and they're still having problems with DPP. So I don't want us to, oh, you know, this is not really working, and we had some issues, so now we're going to go to self-certification. I still think it can be a legitimate program, and it can be helpful to you. So I know that this route might be a way to circumvent it, but I think both routes are reasonable. But I do think admin rules need to be updated, not just on third-party reviewers, but in general, because many people have complained that DPP does not follow their own rules, and that's a problem because we want, you know, applicants to follow the rules. So I think we need to as well.
Great. I agree. Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. Any further? Okay, Councilmember Wire.
Yeah, mahalo, Chair. Law Director. So just to clarify, so if we have a statutory authority with the sunset, then that would kind of move away from where we're at now, where DPP has the authority under its own admin rules to do third-party review. Is that accurate?
Wait, I'm sorry, I couldn't.
So I guess my question is, if you're saying there's ambiguity as to whether you have the statutory authority to do third-party review, by passing the ordinance with the sunset, in effect, you'd be having to come back to the council every time if you wanted to reinitiate third-party review. Is that your understanding?
Yes, I think that's right, yeah.
Okay, and you're comfortable with that, it sounds like?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Have you thought much about how DPP would feel about a 2-year sunset, so it's an ongoing conversation?
I think 2 years, I have no problem with a sunset, but I think administrative rules in itself, it takes a while to develop. We've already gotten feedback. The AIA, they have provided us a draft, so we're already started on it, but I think we really want to get a good grasp of what, because of all of the, even what Councilmember Tupola is talking about, that we really want a good system. So I don't think it's going to be like a quick administrative rule process. It will be a lot of collaboration. So if we do that and it takes 7 to 12 months, and then we only have like a year, I guess we could come back again, but maybe a little bit more time, maybe 3 to 4 years would make sense based on the rulemaking and the training, et cetera, that we'd have to set up in order to get the program fully operational.
Okay, appreciate those sentiments.
Thank you.
Mahalo, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. Members, may we proceed on to remote testimony at this point in time? Madam Clerk, do we have any remote testifiers?
Yes, Chair, we have testifiers.
Okay, Ms. Angela Young. Angela? Unmute yourself.
Aloha. Chair, Vice Chair, and the committee, Angela Melody Young, testifying in support. So self-certification is necessary to expediting the building process, and this policy helps to streamline procedures to bypass regulatory burdens, rules, and barriers. What is an example of a similar policy that contributes in a healthy way to expedite the building processes? An example policy is the emergency proclamation that built Kahales at Queens. They developed 12 units in 8 weeks and has 2 showers. Homemade bypass a lot of laws and regulations which prevents homemade from building this fast. Structurally and from a site layout perspective, this would not have passed building code, but it did not compromise on health, culture, safety, and environment. There was justification in the design, and you can see from an example like this, it works and it's effective. It is possible to build this fast by figuring what's causing these delays in the development process, and trying to legislate parameters to bypass the rules, I think will help to build faster, which addresses the concern of the broader community.
Thank you very much for the support. Okay, any questions for Ms. Young? If not, may we proceed on? Madam Clerk, are there any further remote testifiers?
Chair, there are none.
Thank you very much. Can we move on to registered in-person testifiers? Okay, Mr. Sabaz.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Kawanui Sabas here with HGEA. We stand on our written testimony, which provides comments. I just want to highlight a couple of things from the testimony. Third-party reviewers should be a short-term and temporary solution until DPP is able to obtain enough staff to meet the permit demand. We respectfully ask that the bill be amended to include a sunset date of 2 years after the effective date of this ordinance. We believe 2 years is a reasonable amount of time for DPP and the city to develop and execute a plan to invest in their current and future workforce. Our expectations of this plan, includes increasing the pay for public employees involved in the permitting process, also providing other recruitment and retention incentives, and also to hire and train new staff. Thank you. I'm available for any questions.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Sabas? Please, Councilmember Tupola.
Hello, Mr. Sabas. So you're here from HGEA? Yes. So Councilmember Ward did ask the question to the department about the 2 years. They mentioned admin rules, and in the sunset, obviously we just extended one of our sunsets for a bill and kind of saw how it was working and then moved it out. I hear what you guys are saying too about increasing pay. I did ask the director about how are we doing with relief workers so we can continue to increase this flux. So is HGA's position that at the 2-year mark, dependent on how slow or fast admin rules have been developing up, whether or not we should continue on with it,
Sorry. So, our position would be, at least if staffing levels are still an issue,
I see.
2 years from now, we're happy to revisit it and see if we can, work with the city.
So your position is more not like, oh, if the program is up and going, it's how is your staffing levels at DPP? Is this still necessary? Because hopefully there's enough staff that we can start to expedite permits.
Correct. And that would, eliminate the need for long-term third-party reviewers.
Self-certification, but yes, yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, any further questions for Mr. Sabas? Okay, Councilmember Wire.
Mahalo, Chair, and mahalo, Mr. Sabas. Just wanted to ask, because DPP also provided their interpretation that once we move from it being purely administrative rules to having a statutory authority with the sunset, that they would be having to come back, to extend it if they needed to. I know director's position was 3 to 4 years, so it's bringing it down even more. Understanding your testimony, I would just be curious if you had any additional insight on your comfort level with that, or your thoughts about that, given that they'd be doing the rules and then going from there. I'll be honest, I'm not too familiar with the specific rules that they're planning on changing. The 2 years, it's mostly just from a staffing level standpoint. We think it's enough time, at least from a staffing standpoint, that the city can look into trying to increase the pay for these hard to fill positions, which would eventually allow DBP to meet the demand of permit applications. Appreciate that, Mahalo.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, Mr. Sabas, if not, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yep. Madam Clerk, are there any further in-person testifiers?
Chair, there are none.
Great, thank you very much. Members, any discussion on this particular measure? If, okay, go right ahead.
Yeah, just briefly, Chair, I would just very much support a decrease in the sunset time simply because it would allow for continued conversation, right? So it would provide an avenue for DPP to return to council and provide updates on how the staffing is going, right? How we're filling positions, how the review process is going. But other than that, you know, I welcome Chair's guidance and insight.
Thank you.
Mahalo.
Any further discussion? Yes.
Chair, I appreciate your CD1 specifically clarifying the rulemaking authority of DPP. You know, we've seen in the past few months instances of third-party reviewers going rogue, getting caught, and I think that this rulemaking process can be really good if we're going to have professional self-certification to make it clear to them they know what the rules and boundaries are.
Thank you. Okay, Councilmember Tupola.
Yeah, I also would support a shorter duration of the sunset, not to shortcut the admin rules, but there is significant concern that right now, even the process of third-party reviewers is pretty grueling, and I do think needs to be tightened up in the admin rules. People are concerned if this program is not running, what makes us think we can get another one up and running? Will this also, you know, decrease the bandwidth of DPP as we start to entertain too many different ideas? So I think, you know, HGA has now come to the table with a compromise on the sunset as opposed to just opposing the bill. And I think the continued conversation would be valid in 2 years. And again, it wouldn't, like how we did with Bill 1, we didn't cut it off. We said, okay, where are we at with this? What are our stats on it? Maybe in 2 years, they are able to get the relief workers and we are able to tighten up the program. And then we think, you know, it's good for us to proceed forward. But those are my thoughts. Thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Kiaino.
Chair, my manao on the sunset is I think we have to be realistic about a workable time frame. Similar to what we did in Bill 8 is we built in amendments to require annual reporting. So I will give further thought on that, but my inclination is if we're going to do it, it has to be a longer time frame for it to work. Otherwise, it could actually come back and have to go through the whole process again, and it's to get approval. And so I think I need to think about that. I think adding a reporting requirement, whether it be 6 months or 1 year, could help and alleviate some of the concerns.
Okay, thank you. So at this point in time, the chair would like to recommend that action on Bill 6 be postponed. Okay? To a date and time to be determined by the committee chair, which will be the next, you know, zoning committee meeting, to further consider how self-certification program may work. Are there any discussion, any objections, or reservations? Hearing none, so ordered. At this point in time, this concludes today's, I would say, very excellent educational discussion on all the different topics of issues, but thank you very much, and recess. Adjourn.